Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the July 8th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. Once a year, the officers for the Planning Commission have to be elected. So Planning Commission terms were up at the last day of June. So in the first meeting of July, we have to go through a quick process where the planning director starts the meeting, starts off the election of the chair of the commission, and then they make an election, and then the chair takes over. Just a couple items of note for everybody that's in the room. So this annual organizational meeting is held for the first regular meeting in July. The election of the officers shall be held at this meeting, and nominations may be made by the members or from the public. Any candidate receiving a majority of the written ballots cast by the members present shall be declared elected for a term for 1 year. And planning commissioners, you do have the paper ballots in front of you if we need to use those. In addition to that, no member shall hold the same office for more than 3 consecutive years. And the officers of the Planning Commission consist of a chairperson, a vice chairperson, and a second vice chair. The board member on the commission, today represented by Commissioner LaCroix, is not eligible to hold office. The vice chair shall act as the chairperson in the chairperson's absence, and the second vice chair shall act for the chairperson in the chairperson's and the vice chairperson's absence. So that's basically the duties of the chair. So as according to the Planning Commission bylaws. So with that, when we get started, today's recommendations from the Planning Commission on items for this agenda will be considered by the Board of Commissioners at their regular meeting on July 16th, 2019 at 10:30. We'll start off with roll call. I think the only one that is not here today is Commissioner Coleman, who is excused. Okay. And with that, the first item is going to be elections of the officers. So taking into consideration the items that were mentioned, I'll take nominations from the commission first. Yes, ma'am.
Move the, excuse me. I'll move the nominees, Rich Marsh for chair, Sonny for vice chair, and Travis for second vice chair.
Second.
Second.
All right. Any nominations from the audience? Okay. Any additional nominations from the Planning Commission? Okay. According to the bylaws, they do have to be done by written ballot. So if you'd like to put them all on one and then pass them over to Jerry, then she can look at those. Thank you.
PJ,
Yes, ma'am.
it's the chairman, the first chair, and the second chair.
That is correct.
Okay.
I believe it's Rich Marsh was nominated for chair, Sonny Rivers for second chair, and Travis Lassiter. I'm sorry, Sonny Rivers for vice chair and Travis Lassiter for second vice chair.
Thank you.
And then when you're done, just pass them over and Jerry can take a look at them.
Oh, Jerry will get them.
I passed mine down, yep.
Do I get the vote?
Thank you. Okay. There were no additional nominations, but due to the bylaws, because it says it has to do by written ballot, we weren't able to make an election by acclamation. So I'd like to congratulate Chair Marsh, Vice Chair Rivers, and Second Vice Chair Lassiter for this coming year in the Planning Commission. Congratulations.
Thank you. I take it away?
Yes, sir.
All right. First and foremost, I want to thank Travis for the holding the chair position for the past 2 years and the great job that Travis has done to help lead the commission. I have some big shoes to fill there, so if I may be leaning on you a little bit, Travis, to answer some questions from time to time. So thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the June 22nd, 2019 minutes. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes from the board?
I so move for approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes. Next item is the approval of the agenda. Before we get started, there should be agendas on the back of the room there for everyone to review. We do have speaker request forms, so if you have an item that you would like to speak on, please do so. Fill one of those out. And no, we don't have speaker request forms now.
PJ Conver, Director, Planning Department. No, that was something that the Planning Commission is going to decide on later today.
Got it. Thanks. I thought we had used those a few times. All right. With that, today's agenda consists of, I'll get there, 24 items. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Brings us to the consent agenda.
Thank you, Chair. Again, PJ Conover, Director, Planning Department. The consent agenda. The following items have been placed on the consent agenda for action to be taken on all items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration. Findings of the Planning Commission are recommendations to the Pennington County Board of Commissioners who will make the final decision. Item 4, conditional use permit review 1733 for bituminous paving. Terry Sewell is the agent to review a temporary hot mix asphalt batch plant, stockpile site, and contractor storage area for contract work in the general agriculture district. Staff recommends to end conditional use permit 1733. Item 5, conditional use permit review 1808 for Stromer Properties LLC. Brooke Stromer is the agent to review an illuminated on-premise sign within 1,500 feet of the residential zoning district / dwelling unit in a general commercial district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 1808 with 8 conditions. Item 6, conditional use permit 1821 for David and Lee Byers to review a single-family residence in a highway service district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 1821 with 6 conditions. Item 7, conditional use permit review 1823 for BCS Invest LLC. Kevin Haberstroh is the agent to review 6 storage units and a caretaker manager's residence on the subject property in the general commercial and general agriculture district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 1823 with 18 conditions. Item 8, conditional use permit review 1902 for Greg and Angela Anderson to review a vacation home rental on the subject property in suburban residential district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 1902 with 15 conditions. Item 9, conditional use permit 1915 for Samuel G. Fullerton III to allow for a caretaker's residence on the subject property after a single-family residence is built in a limited agriculture district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 1915 with 7 conditions. Item 10, major plan unit development amendment review, PU 1801 for Deerfield Cabins LLC to review an existing plan unit development to allow an existing single-family resident on lot 43 to be used as a vacation home rental on the subject property. Staff recommends approval of the extension of major plan unit development amendment 1801 with 25 conditions. Item 11, construction permit review 1705 for Anthony and Michelle Griffith to review bringing in fill to an area to level, gravel, and allow for reclamation of the remaining area. Staff recommends to end construction permit 1705. Item 12, construction permit review 1903 for Mike and Kimberly Van Loan to review the leveling and grading of a road to be utilized as a driveway for future construction in a single-family residence. Staff recommends approval of the extension of construction permit 1903 with 9 conditions. Item 13, special consideration to Trailwoods Village Plan Unit Development 1904 for Misty Klein LaBelle for a special consideration to PUD 7902 to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 25 to 23 feet and to allow for the construction of a garage in accordance with Section 213 of the Pennington County Zoning Ordinance. Staff recommends the continued special consideration of Trailwood Village Plan Unit Development 1904 to allow the applicant time to address the 2 sheds, and both are located within the setback, and 1 is located within the easement. Item 14, minor plat MPL 1919 for David Grover to create Lot 1 of Grover subdivision. Staff recommends approval of minor plat MPL 1919 with 9 conditions. Item 15, minor plat MPL 1920 for Ryan and Dawn Loras from Fisk Land Surveying as the agent to combine 2 lots to create Lot 4R of Block D, Idlewild Mountain Development Subdivision. Staff recommends approval of minor plat MPL 1920 with 6 conditions.
Are there any items that staff would like to pull?
Item 9 for minor correction. Any others?
Are there any items that the board would like to pull?
Mr. Chairman, item 13, please.
Any others? Okay. As a reminder to the audience, the items on the consent agenda will be voted on with 1 vote. So if there's any items on there that you would like to discuss, those are the items that would need to be pulled from the agenda at this time. Are there any items? Okay, seeing none, we have items 4 through 8, 10 through 12, and 14 and 15, excluding items 9 and 13 from the consent agenda. Is there a motion for approval?
I move approval.
I'll second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion passes. Brings us to item number 9.
Item number 9 is conditional use permit 1915 for Samuel G. Fullerton III. Just a minor correction to the recommendation that appears in the agenda as read during the consent calendar. It reads as to recommend approval of the extension of conditional use permit 1915 with 7 conditions. It should actually read to recommend approval of conditional use permit 1915 with 7 conditions. Extensions are only for existing.
PG, I see the recommendation to approve, or was that just in the,
Might have been in an actual staff report, not in the agenda.
It's in the agenda as well.
oh, I see it in the agenda, but I saw the regular recommendation in the staff report that said recommend approval of conditional use.
Correct. The agenda has it wrong, so we're just
Gotcha.
correcting the agenda. So staff would recommend approval of conditional use permit 1915 with 7 conditions with the verbiage changed to item number 9.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, move approval.
Second.
Motion and second for approval of conditional use permit 1915 with 7 conditions. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item 13.
The only question I have on that was, as I read through it, and it says, the applicant asked why she has to comply when all of her neighbors have sheds and garages in the setbacks, and I didn't see any response to her, which then made me curious as to what the answer is. Why does she have to comply when her neighbors don't?
It's not that the neighbors don't have to comply, it's just that when a request comes in specific to her, we focus on bringing her into compliance. It doesn't mean that everybody else just gets a free-for-all, but we are a complaint basis only type of office. We don't drive around looking for, violations. So if someone would like to file a formal complaint, then we will pursue those. But just like anything, when someone comes in for a request, we have to, the property has to be in compliance in order for those
Did you
requests.
explain to her that all she has to do is fill out a complaint form, then everyone will have to be in compliance?
I shouldn't say everyone, it will be addressed as far as, if they are in compliance. The ones, that she had talked to me about, I had told her we need time to look into those, because I don't know if they have been in front of this board, because there's a lot of them that have been and haven't been, whether our code enforcement has looked into it. So that's what was, communicated to her.
I see. So by virtue of the fact that she came in the first place caused her to be in violation, and because nobody else is coming forward with any changes, their violation just
Or-
stands.
Or unless someone files a complaint, a written complaint to
A
our
written
office.
complaint?
Yes,
Okay, because it sounds like she made a verbal complaint.
right. We require written complaints to be made.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think.
Any further discussion on item number 13? Please come forward and state your name for the record into the microphone.
Misty LaBelle.
Okay?
I don't have a problem moving the one shed because I was going to move it next year anyways. And the blue one's coming down once the garage is built.
Could you get a little closer to the mic?
Sorry,
can't hear
I have a
you.
low voice. So I don't have a problem moving the shed. I want to try to do it concurrent or after the garage is built when I can move everything out of it into the garage. And then the little blue one was going to come down anyways.
That's the little one.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're okay. That one.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
little blue one. That one, it's ready to fall down anyway, so it's coming down anyways. And then that one is getting moved over to next to the house, but, so I just am building the garage, but I gotta move the stuff out of the sheds into the garage so that I can move them,
Okay.
pile them out in the yard for the rain.
So the current recommendation is to continue this item.
Can we do this concurrent where they're building at the same time and do it all together?
You know,
So
I'm
we
not,
don't delay
I'm not sure of the answer on that. Is that something that, do we typically require compliance, or is it such a thing where she can get approval for the garage and then this gets followed up on in 6 months or something?
We could, at the next meeting, we could continue it till the next meeting, so we could make that as a condition of approval, and if this board chooses to approve it, then, based on her, sorry.
So, no, it's okay, that's fine. Just one note for the planning commissioners who haven't been here for a while. The planning commission has done stuff like that in the past and has asked the planning staff to stop giving leeway because people will say one thing and not do what they say, and then it just creates more taxpayer burden for time. Not saying that this landowner will, but that has been the wish of the planning commission from before, was to not allow that type of, trust me, I'll do it type of action. And staff is bound by the ordinance as much as we would like to vary from it sometimes. We're not allowed to.
I hear you.
So is it possible for you to move the shed and then move your stuff into that shed, or you're saying the burden is you have to take everything out of the shed and move it?
Oh, there's a couple issues. Where the shed is gonna be moved is a hot tub, so I have to extend the cement first. So that has to get done, then move the shed over there, but also have to pour new cement for the hot tub in another area. So that's why it's gonna take a little bit, and then plus I take everything out of it. So it's more, I think taking everything out of it's more about the rain
Okay,
and having than anything.
I understand that.
So it's something where I have to have concrete poured and moved. It's just a little bit of a process.
And what do you think your time frame is for completing all of that work?
I'm hoping they can start the garage within the next couple of weeks. And then once that starts, then I can start moving things over. So I'm hoping within the next 2 or 3 weeks.
So is it going to be a hardship to delay this for a few weeks while you get the hot tub and the concrete and that kind of stuff extended, and then come back after you've
A
done
little
those
bit, because I
items?
had to take time off work to come here.
Okay. Any other thoughts on the matter from the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Go
I
ahead,
just have a
Sonny.
general question about this. I don't recall ever seeing an item starting with special consideration too. I wondered if this is something new. Maybe staff could tell us if this is a new way of doing things or what initiated this item.
PJ Conover, Director of Planning Department. It's not new. It's not used that often. It's special for this development and this development only, so that they don't have to go through the same process for the plan unit development, because there are known issues, and this is a very large plan unit development. So it was created, I can't remember the exact year, but it was done, this process, just for this plan unit development.
So was this item initiated by a building permit or a complaint, or how did we
I
get to
believe it was initiated by a building permit.
Okay. The tiny shed was at number 1. I mean, that's such a small item. I didn't realize that those were subject to setback requirements, but apparently they are.
Yeah, not every structure needs a building permit, but every structure is required to meet setbacks and easements.
Okay, little sheds, even like the plastic ones, they count as a structure.
In our ordinance, yes.
Okay.
Can I say something on that? When my husband and I built the big one, we actually came in to get a building permit, and they told us we didn't need one. And we asked where we could put them. And the guy told us 8 feet from the back, 8 feet from the side, and I believe it was 25 feet from the front. So we put it, I believe it's actually 10 or 12, I think, from the back. So at the time, I don't know if he wasn't looking at that, it was a PUD or what he was looking at, but we put it with where he told us we could put it.
Okay, thank you.
Any further comments? Questions? Okay, the item is still recommended to continue the special consideration for this item to allow the applicant time to address the 2 sheds. One of the sheds will be coming down, and the second one is going to be moved once you build the garage. As I read this, though, you also will have to have part of an easement vacated through the city of Rapid City. Has that been done?
A what?
Am I reading this right? There's an easement that needs to be vacated through the city of Rapid City?
Yeah.
Or is that only for
yeah,
the shed to remain in its current location?
That's for that shed in its current location, because it's in the 8-foot minor drainage and utility easement and in the 8-foot setback. So if that one is going to be moved, the issue is that property is pretty, if you look at the lot lines and things, even if she moves the shed, she'll still have to have, the shed won't be meeting setbacks, so that'll have to be part of the special consideration, depending upon where she's going to move it. If she moves it out of the easement, because the rear is 23 feet and the side to the like northwest where they put the garage, it's 8 feet between structures. That's how that plan unit development is written. Because there is a drainage easement, that setback will be met easily because of where the other structure is. But it's the rear, that 23 feet.
Yeah, because there's plenty of room on the side for the garage, or for that shed to go 8 feet from the house and still it'll be, I think, did you guys measure? I think it's over 12 or 15 from the street.
Right, the rear yard setback, and then the other side yard setback, the side yard on the south are the issues.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
So the confusion was the drainage easement's not, as she said, she moved 8 foot, she thought, from the property line from either side, but in reality, the setback for the backyard is 23 feet.
Right, because it's a special
Okay.
PUD, which is
Right.
what not
So-
was told to us at that
Okay,
time.
so I see where the confusion come in. Question, Misty. Currently, right now, do you have a concrete slab for the shed that you have now?
No, right now, well, there's a little concrete pad, but I have to extend it because the shed is, I believe it's 12 by 16. And right now it's only a 10 by 12, just enough for a hot tub pad. So I have to extend it out and make it a little bit bigger to go.
No, I guess what I was asking, where it's located at right now, did you pour a slab already for it?
No,
So it's sitting on just a wooden foundation right now?
yeah, and it had
Okay, so
sand and everything where it was all leveled out.
so it could be moved by putting some logs down and easily move. I was thinking, I wanted to make sure it wasn't on a foundation or a slab already.
No.
So it could be moved to temporarily to, okay. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I'd like a little clarification on our action here today. For example, this recommendation is to continue. So if we denied continuing, then there still isn't an action, you still wouldn't get your approval.
Right.
So I guess I don't quite see what to facilitate moving this along, what action we really need or can or need to take.
I see two paths forward. We either continue this and Misty, you would have to resolve your issues with your sheds, and then we would come back and go through this process and approve it, or there would be some stipulations put with some recommendations set forth such that, that it would be moved in this amount of time, and then we're creating the burden on staff that PJ just explained, where there would need to be a follow-up, ensure that all of that work got done in a timely manner, and then you would basically be given approval for the garage today. That's how I see it. Based on the things that have happened in the past, I'm leaning towards, unfortunately, continuing this item until the shed is moved. It seems to me that if you came back and you had a schedule for when these things could get done, and then maybe get some of that stuff moved and get the shed moved, the other shed tore down, then all of a sudden the heirs on the site come into compliance and there's no more issues. So that's where I'm sitting right now.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I tend to agree with you because I think if she'd had the pads poured already right now and they're ready, I'd be willing to do the stipulations. But I think with the weather the way it's been, I think it's best that we kind of wait. She could apply for the variance, but I understand where she wants to go. But also, I think the shed could be moved if they want to move forward as far as being able to move it forward to get it out of the way.
I don't know, because I'd have to move it again to pour the pad, is the problem.
Well, I would suggest the pad get poured first. That's the biggest thing before I want to make, for me personally, before I make that decision, because I know how that goes. We have our plans for the concrete and it doesn't get done. Then we decide if we're going to wait till next year or whenever we have time. So that would be where I sit on this. I would want to wait.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
So if I understood you correctly, you're hoping to start the construction on the garage in about 2 weeks. Is that right?
Right.
Is it going to cost you anything to delay it?
I do not know. My contractor couldn't make it. He had prior arrangements, so I'm not sure.
PJ, I have a question. If we continue this, the sheds are resolved, will the special consideration still remain on the consent agenda?
On the consent?
Yeah.
We can
So
put it on there, yeah.
With the variance for the minimum rear yard setback from 25 feet to 23 feet
Unless
remain on the consent agenda?
Unless something comes up that would warrant it being off the consent.
Okay.
But otherwise, it would be on consent, probably just like this one.
Well, it sounds like the hardship is more of maybe coming and getting to the meeting, but if it's something that remains on the consent agenda and the issues that are removed from the site, then it's less likely that she would need to be here.
Right.
As long as the issues are removed, so.
Right. And, Mr. Chair, if I may, in the next couple of weeks, it does not stop her from pouring the pad or doing dirt work that would be needed for the garage. That is still allowed to be done under 10,000 square feet without a permit. That'd be the construction. So they can still move forward with getting the ground ready.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I was just, so she could get started with the pad, so you really not, actually should be doing all three within the same time frame. Okay.
That can all be done, just the actual construction
Construction of it.
cannot begin.
Yeah.
The building up.
Okay, so they can do the pad at the same time that they're doing the other pads?
Yeah, that would probably be a wise
Yeah.
combining.
Save you some time.
Yeah.
I would, any further discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion for item 13.
Move approval?
Motion for approval, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second to recommend to continue the special consideration to allow the applicant time to address the two sheds. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, no. No, motion carries.
Thank you.
Misty, do you understand everything that just happened there? All right, thank you.
I hear approval.
Morning, Commissioners. Jason
Brings us to
Tennyson.
item 16. Go ahead.
Jason Tennyson, County Planner. Agenda item number 16 is for rezone and comprehensive plans amendments 1908. Applicant is Brad and Colleen Kurtz. Surveyor is DC Scott Surveyors. Site location is located, it's about 2.5 miles north on Highway 385 from the Highway 44 intersection. Applicants have submitted a request to rezone 10.5 acres from limited agriculture district to low-density residential district. Applicants are also requesting to amend the Pennington County Comprehensive Plan to change future land use from planned unit development sensitive to low-density residential district. Applicants are also in the process of subdividing the property. Saw this under Layout Plan 1910 about a month ago. And this will satisfy one of their conditions of that approval. Current zoning within 1 mile includes general agriculture district, limited agriculture district, low density suburban residential, and highway service districts. Future land use within 1 mile includes public land, planned unit development, sensitive district, suburban residential, low density residential, and highway service districts. Therefore, the applicant's request to change the current and future land use of the subject property appears to be in harmony with the county's current and future land use zoning in the area. Therefore, staff recommends approval of rezone 1908 and comprehensive plan amendment 1908.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Seeing no questions, I would entertain a motion on item 16.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Motion and second for approval. Any further discussion on item 16? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 17. And just so I'm on the same page, item 17 doesn't require a vote, right? It's just for public consideration.
Cody Sack, environmental planner. Yes, the construction permit agenda is just for staff and the planning director to let the public speak and address any concerns that they have with the construction permits for his final approval. With that, item 17 is a construction permit to 1909, the applicant's Wrangle Construction Company, and the permits to improve drainage around Rapid Valley Elementary School. This was routed around the interdepartment routing. County Highway came back and said that they had met with the applicant, the school district, a representative from the Hawthorne ditch, to discuss the drainage plan that they had, and they do have approval to discharge into the Hawthorne ditch and to County Highway, or the drainage, so that it doesn't overflow. Another main thing that came about was that it is in the MS4, which is highly regulated. So they're really, like others that you've seen here, it's really monitored by staff to make sure that there's no issues with sediment leaving the site. The total disturbance will be under an acre, about 0.69 acres. They have started work without an approved construction permit, so they will have to pay a penalty fee equal to $250. And they'll have to do that. Staff's recommending that they do that before the planning director approve the permit. With that, the staff is recommending that the planning director approve construction permit 1909 with 14 conditions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, sir.
I have a question. This is right next door to that Black Hill Speedway. And so how's this going to impact on all the stuff that's going on over there with the drainage and the conversations that are going on?
I'm really not sure on that one.
Hi, PJ Conover, Director of Planning Department. I'm not sure what the impact is going to be, but I can give an update on the Speedway as they've hired a different engineer, and that engineer is working on engineered drainage plans. And they've had all the public meetings that they needed to have, all the meetings with different governmental agencies in the past as they were directed by the board. But we're just waiting on those drainage plans from Ferber Engineering now.
Any further questions?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead,
What was
Sonny.
the work that was done to warrant the violation or the?
They disturbed more than 10,000 square feet without the permit. They basically started their project without the final approval from the planning director.
Breaking ground.
Yes, if you go out there, there's quite a few stockpiles of dirt, and they've done quite a bit of work out there as of now. So, and they were contacted, and they were told that they didn't have a permit, and they said that they were just going to sit tight until this was approved.
Excuse me, so somebody submitted a written complaint?
So with a construction permit, we go out and do initial inspections, and when I was out doing other inspections, and when another staff member was out there doing inspections, they noticed that work was being done. And since a construction permit was applied for that property, and since they were doing work, we can go out there and check and monitor if they're doing work. And regularly with construction permits, we do that because people think that once they apply for it, they have it, then they go out and get it and start work.
Commissioner Rundy, basically, they applied for it, they just started before they got approval.
I see, thank you.
Cody, my question is, do they have the erosion and sediment controls up that they need?
Yeah, so they do have their inlet protection. I couldn't see any wattles that they had. However, I have this weekend I was in the area and I drove by. We had a lot of rain over the 4th and everything. I saw no evidence of sediment leaving the site.
Okay. Further questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So they reached out and got with the Hawthorne, so they took the initiated steps to with the drainage plans to make it see that it works for them, correct?
Yep. They met with Highway, the Hawthorne, and the applicant, and the school district who owns the property all met.
Okay. And there was no issues?
No, there are some revised plans that County Highway has that we don't have, that I'm trying to get. But generally with drainage, County Highway, if they say that they're okay with it, we respect that, and we.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the commission? Any questions from the audience on this item? Please come forward to the podium.
Hi, my name is Carla Marshall. I'm a concerned citizen, I guess. I was wondering if that construction company started without the permit, are they going to be fined anything for that?
Yeah,
They will be fined?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Just make sure it's enforced, because how much will they be fined?
$250, I believe, is the amount listed in the agenda here, or in the packet.
And, okay. And what's the construction of? What is it, a huge building or?
They're fixing some drainage issues at the elementary school.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right, thank you.
Any further questions? All right, seeing none, we're moving on to item number 18.
Motion. Hold on here just a minute, because we did.
Do we make a motion? That's the question.
That's the
No,
construction
there's-
permit
there's-
one that we
there's
just
no-
reviewed.
yeah.
I'm looking at my other minutes.
We didn't on the last set of these that came through.
We didn't. I thought we did.
Yep, so just FYIs.
Okay, item 18 is a construction permit. 1910, it's to grade portions of an access easement and to construct a private gravel driveway to include ditches and culverts. The applicant is Jess and Sarah Pekarski. This was also routed in interdepartment routings as well. There was nothing major that came back. There's no floodplain on the property. County Highway had no issues with the culvert sizes or anything with the drainage that they had in their plan. The area disturbed will be less than an acre, so they wouldn't be required anything from the state. The road is to provide future access to a resident. They'll be reseeding the some of the ditches and putting rock check dams on some of the steeper slopes. And they will be installing silt fence as well for erosion and sediment control. And so staff is recommending the planning director approve construction permit 1910 with 11 conditions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Any questions from the audience on this issue? Seeing none, that brings us to, that's the end of the construction permit agenda. Brings us to item number 19. Thanks, Cody.
Peter Conover, Director of Planning Department. Item 19 is Ordinance Amendment 1901 to consider to amend an adoption of the Pennington County Proposed Comprehensive Plan. Basically, a couple of weeks ago, the Planning Commission and the board members received two different versions of the same document. One showed the edits as collected over the months of hearings. That one did not have, well, in a paper form, you got that with the maps in it. There's also a clean version that shows the document without the edits in it. Both of those documents have been available on the Pennington County Planning Department's website as well as the county's main website. We haven't received any new comments from any concerned citizens. We did receive some written comments from Commissioner Johnson that kind of went through chapters 1 up through chapters 11, and I do have some comments on those. You also have an updated comment matrix, which is the 40-page document with the burgundy color on the top. But in addition to that, Mr. Chair, I believe that there are some individuals in the audience today that would like to comment on the comprehensive plan. I'm not sure what specific sections or how you would like to proceed at this point.
Okay. I think what I'd like to do is take the comments from the audience, and then what I would propose is that we go through each chapter and address the items. I'm assuming that each of us just have a few of the items in each chapter, and including the items from Catherine here. And then what I would like to understand is, can we do this such that we make all of these changes today and still make a recommendation to get this to the board, or does that require the consultant to go back and make those edits before we send it?
So we can have those, would prefer a recommendation to the board.
Okay.
With maybe even the proposed changes from today.
Okay.
But keeping in mind that the one item you will not have is a finished future land use map from chapter 3.
Okay.
If you remember, the comments matrix is still working on fixing that. When this goes to the board, it will not go right away. There will be some time for the document to be updated into completeness, I guess you should say.
Okay.
And then also some additional time for the public to comment. We did put it in the newspaper, letting people know not only the regular meeting announcement, but a box, if you will, I don't know,
Yeah, it was this display
a
ad.
display ad letting people know about the meeting. We've done several of those. So
Okay.
you could make a recommendation with the proposed changes taking effect.
Well, I would like to have those paths be parallel if possible, but I would, anybody have thoughts on the matter before we get started?
Um, I'm kind of ambivalent, quite frankly, on whether we uh, ask for another update and then we approve it to move on or not, or do it today after going through the comments and have some assurance that those comments will be addressed and so on. But I guess, I mean, I could do it either way, but I thought it would be interesting to hear from the Board of Commissioners, Lloyd, to see, what's your view on this? Is there some timeline that we need to aim toward in meeting this? I mean, is it important that we move this out of our committee today? Or is it, is it okay just to take our time? I mean, what's the view from the Board of Commissioners?
Well, I kind of hate to speak for all.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
fair enough.
Yeah. I think a lot of work's been put into this and for quality work, I think that's what happens. And I guess I would refer, I don't know about the contracts, we have time frames with that or where we're moving that. I'd have to refer to our staff to see if it needs to be moved right along quickly or not. I think you have a plan for some public comments and that period in that time frame to be able to make some of those. So I guess that's where I think PJ's talking about the approvals. I think they've got a plan for more public comment and comments coming in. So that might mess with, it might.
Go ahead.
As far as the contract, we're okay. There's still some outstanding money from 2018 that we owe because this was projected to be done. At least we were going to be billed in its entirety prior to 2018. So there's about $15,000 that still needs to carry over. Other than that, Matrix will work with us with whatever our schedule is.
My thoughts is that we could move this forward with comments that we agree or disagree with today, and incorporate those in and say that we want these items incorporated. We move this along, and then when those rewrites are done, I don't see any reason why this commission can't still make a comment recommendation to the board similar to us moving it forward. So if the rewrite happens in parallel, we can still say, hey, they didn't quite get this right in the rewrite of this, please make this change, and then that should be able to be adopted, I would think, by the board. Can that scenario happen?
That scenario can happen. There is the option of having a completed document that goes forward to the board, so there's no discrepancy, no concern. I don't think the document will ever be 100% complete. I think there'll always be something to change.
Sure.
But whatever we can do as planning commission and the staff to make it as less confusing on the public as possible, because right now there are two documents out there. So we want to make sure that the public is aware of what we're moving forward for them.
Okay.
And in addition to that, if you are going to not make a recommendation today, you're looking probably at your second meeting in August by the time you hear this again. Yeah, because we need that month for the re-advertising because we haven't advertised any future meetings.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
So PJ, just following on from what you said, and I understand that there needs to be ultimately one document, but how will that work? I mean, based upon let's say that we go follow the path today, that we get the input from the audience, we have our own comments up here, we make some decisions on what changes we would like to see, and then do you see then that Matrix would take this report, edit Sean, add the comments that we request from today, And that this then will be, this in a revised form will be the single document that'll move forward? Is that how
Well,
that'll work?
okay, so I may have misspoke. They'll still have two documents that move forward. There'll be the clean one that has all the edits, and then also the one that shows the edits for the planning commission, or sorry, from the planning commission to the board, so the board is aware of what the planning commission actually changed.
Right, of course, but nonetheless, it's still the same document, just in two different forms.
yes.
But this document will go away, essentially. The first one,
Which one is that?
First one.
the initial one, the one that
Yes.
came out in July of 2018.
Yeah, I would say that that's.
Yeah, so that'll go
Use that
away.
as a doorstop
And
now.
so so the single document will be this one, and it'll be one with track changes and the other one without, but, okay, I see.
Yep.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm in favor of moving forward for the simple reason, no matter what we present, there will be changes made, you see.
That's right.
Because the commissioners are made up of different people and, you know, to get everyone to agree, it will never happen. You know, so, you know, I'm in favor of making the changes and moving it forward to the county commissioners to expedite this.
I think that our motion today just needs to be, if we move it forward, that it needs to be, the motion needs to be removing the edited document moving forward in addition to changes discussed today.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
make that part of the record.
Yep,
And then,
that's good with me.
go ahead, sir.
Well, thank you. I agree with you. I think it's going to be a living, breathing document that in between your approval to then, there's going to be the changes you make. And then when the commission gets it, it could be, there could be more.
Sure.
And so that could take it even longer. So I think you guys have done some good, hard work on this, and I think it's time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
Any further questions from the commission before we open it up to the audience? Okay. We will open up comments to the audience then on this item. Please come forward, state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Carol Hayes. I live on Box Elder Creek. I am concerned with clean water. I've been offline for a week, so because of my internet provider, but it's my understanding that the comprehensive plan contains no verbiage that discourages large-scale toxic mining. I would like to petition you all to put verbiage in that discourages large-scale toxic mining. You may be aware that there are two proposals in front of the Forest Service right now, one to mine near Rochford and Peshla, also known as Peshla, and right at Pactola. And I'm wondering if you all understand the impact that throwing toxic heavy metals into Pactola would have on the tourism industry, on agriculture, on Rapid City's clean water supply. Do you understand that large-scale mining always includes arsenic, mercury, and cyanide? All of these could go into Rapid Creek. If there's a spill at Rochford, it would take about 29 minutes for the spill to get to Pactola. If there's a spill at Pactola, the impact on Rapid City's water supply would be instantaneous, or virtually so. So do you all understand that all the major water supplies in the Black Hills come from the Minnelusa and Madison aquifers, and that these are the ones that supply Rapid Cities supposedly, or we hope, clean water? Are you all aware that the Black Hills already contains Superfund sites that are so toxic that the federal government has largely taken charge of so-called cleanup. Of course, there are aspects of cleanup that can never be done. All mine sites virtually seep arsenic, and there's no way for it to be contained. So you can't like build a containment structure and stop the arsenic. I guess the other point I would like to make is that any spill from a large scale mine in the Black Hills, any spill would have an extremely negative impact on tourism. It would also have a very negative impact on your ability to enjoy Pactola. If you have ever if you've ever gone boating or fishing at Pactola, understand that a spill there would have potentially horrific environmental and economic impacts. It would impact agriculture, it would impact tourism, and so on. And I guess my final word is you all, I believe, are aware people who know that the U.S. mining industry has a history of building mines, causing toxic situations all in the entire environment of the mine, and then declaring bankruptcy and walking away. And if you think that isn't true, think about the 600 people that were laid off in the Powder River or Gillette region a week and a half ago. The company simply destroyed the environment, the surrounding environment, or large parts of it, and then walked away from any obligation to clean it up. Not that you can actually clean up and remediate large-scale toxic mines. The same thing happened at the Gilt Edge mine up just northwest, I think, of Lead. It's a Superfund site. They just walked away. Okay, there is a strong history of that in the U.S., and there have been few enough sanctions for that. But even when it happens, the water is already despoiled. So my final remark would be that in this semi-arid region, we cannot take a chance on losing our major source of water or even having it temporarily polluted. Although it wouldn't be very temporary, by the way, because the heavy metals go to the bottom of the creek and continue to create toxic fish and that kind of thing for many years to come. We call on you to exercise some vision and some leadership. You guys spend a lot of time looking at plats and things of people's land. I wish that you would think about your obligation to your children and your grandchildren and research this a little and actually express some vision in what you do. Take the reins, talk to the Forest Service, indicate your concern that the permits at Rochford, Pishla, and Pactola, what terrible impacts they would have here. Think, plan, please be visionary.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any
Mr. Chair,
questions?
I would second these comments and say that of all the issues that the public brings to us, I think water impacts is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, and clean water especially, and in regards to mining. There's section, chapter 4 on the economic development element, goal ED3. This section reads, Pennington County attracts diverse industries that are considerate of the natural environment, and yet there's only one item left in this section, and this is one of the items that I wanted to bring up today because I agree that we could do a little bit better and have a little bit more to say about how we could attract industries that are lower impact on our water, perhaps as well in other areas. So I would again second these comments by Ms. Hayes that we should maybe do a little bit more here.
So are there specific recommended changes to the verbiage of the report?
Well, there was ED 3.2, which has been crossed out. I think the reason for that was specifically the word incentives. Can anybody confirm if that was the problem with that one? We don't want to.
Where's it at?
This is page 4-5. ED 3.2 has been removed. It originally read, the county should provide incentives to attract clean and environmentally friendly businesses. It has been crossed out, I believe, due to the problem of incentives that the county may or may not be able to do. But something maybe could take its place, something a little more impactful, or rather that will address the
I don't
intention.
remember the specific item on why 3.2 was crossed off, but that makes sense. I don't know if the county could be in a position to provide one company an incentive and not another company an incentive type of a thing, unless the board created something.
If you look on to goal ED4 and part ED 4.2, it's not incentive, but just as a similar example, we have the county should support, in this case, value-added agriculture, but perhaps the county could support, rather than provide incentives, but we could say support clean, environmentally friendly businesses. And I know the comments by Ms. Hayes were much more specific to mining, so I don't want to distract from that either, because we could say more about mining as well.
It could be put in the context of clean water, too. Mr. Marsh?
Go ahead.
If the verbiage isn't immediately available, I'm pretty sure we could supply it in the next half hour or make a suggestion to you all for your consideration.
Well, I guess what I would like to do is, we've spent a ton of time going through these things, have the specifics here. I'd like to make sure that the specifics are incorporated today so we can move this thing forward. So, Sonny, are you suggesting then the county should continue to attract clean, environmentally friendly businesses and make that ED 3.2?
Possibly. I've struggled a little bit to come up with the best verbiage on this section, but whether it's to bring back 3.2 with different words or just do something entirely different. One idea I came up with was, for example, the county should encourage environmentally low impact industry to reduce stress on water resources. That's one. That, however, doesn't address the bigger issue that was just brought up, is that with certain industries we have pollution, big, high impact pollution risks.
Okay.
So there's another one that could maybe be added here. I don't have very specific recommendations other than to second the fact that we could do more, or we could pass this on to the board and ask the board to do more with it.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
You know, in terms of the mining specifically, you know, goal NCR-6, which is on page 10-5, is the one that addresses mining and our expectation that this will be done in a way to protect water and other environmental impacts. And, you know, we spent some time working on this, as I recall, during our hearings, and it does specifically say that, like in NCR 6.5, that all mining operations in the county shall be required to take precautions to avoid contamination from waste or incidents related to storage and disposal, on and on. And then there's several above that address this issue. And, you know, I'll go back to what I said during the hearings, and that I don't think anybody can quarrel with, or will argue with, the idea that water supplies need to be protected, both in terms of quality and quantity. But I do know that there is a very different, there's a lot of different opinions between if mining can be done safely or not. And there's one strong view that it can never be done safely, and there's another view that it can be done safely. And even though there's a lot of anecdotal stories about mines that in the past that were done, you know, with previous operating under previous operating rules that ended up in environmental impact. I mean, there's no question about it. There's mining that goes on every day in this country that's under today's rules that are doing it in a sustainable, you know, environmentally appropriate way. So I guess because I recognize that that very sharp difference of opinions on this issue of whether we should allow mining or not. I don't think the comprehensive plan is a place for us to make that decision. I mean, that's a big decision that needs to be made, as this plays out. We do need an ordinance on hard rock mining, which I believe is being worked on by the Board of Commissioners. And, but I do think that there is pretty clear, maybe not, I don't know about strong, but it's certainly clear in NCR-6 that the intent is to consider all mining in a way that protects the environmental resource, including water.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I have to agree with Kathy on that one. I mean, I grew up in an area where we have a lot of oil, the Permian Basin. There's been a lot of oil spills out there, and obviously there was reclamation, but now there's a lot of clean ways to do it. Any industry out there, you're going to have clean ways to do it, and you have dirty ways to do it. But if you're meeting the current standards, and they're spearheaded to be really safe or clean, then I don't see why we wouldn't encourage those industries to be in the area. And I have to agree that I think I see within goal NCR 6 that from the comprehensive plan's perspective, it is looking at if they're going to do mining, there is a lot of requirements, at least from the county's perspective and oversight, seeing that making sure to avoid contamination. In fact, that's one of the things that is stated in there, take precautions to avoid contamination from waste or incidents related to the storage and disposal of hazardous materials and general operating activities at the site. So I'm not sure if I would say that we need to put anything that discourages. I think we have enough in here that at least shows that we are concerned with the environment, even when there's hard rock mining.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to Sunny then. Would you like to change the wording on ED 3.2 to the verbiage that you said? I'm going to try to keep this going.
Well, I think I've conflated a couple things. The mining thing is well addressed in NCR 6 as just stated. ED3 was something else that came to my mind previously, and that's why I brought that in. So we got mining on one hand, and just in general, environmentally responsible encouragements.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we're not soft on industries that will come in and pose any possible contamination of our water supplies, I think the people of the county can be happy with that. But if there's more comments to be made, there is more time. So I would say that to the public.
But Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Kathy.
But, to your point, Sonny, I mean, personally, I don't have any objection to rephrasing ED 3.2 to get at your point. And I thought your suggestion about the county should support or should, I forget exactly what you said, but I certainly don't have any objection to, putting a little extra punch, in that concept.
I think that the statement on the following page would be applicable. The county should continue to attract clean, environmentally friendly businesses.
Oh, that's right. So
Would you be okay with that change?
Yeah, I think this one shouldn't have been completely wiped out just because provide incentives could have been changed to support or encourage. So I agree that we could do more with 3.2 and bring it back with better language.
Well, it would be similar to ED 4.1. So the county should continue to attract clean, environmentally friendly businesses. Good with that change?
Yes.
Okay. So will you be keeping track of these for the matrix folks?
I do. I actually have to go back and listen to all the meetings all over again and track because of the motions made, discussion, and then things change. So I was coming up here to ask if you could specifically say what the change is. Are we just adopting language from 4.1 into 3.2? And I think the cross out in 3.2 is actually a mistake. I can't find anything in the comment matrix that 3.2 was supposed to be touched.
Is there anything else in here that anyone remembers regarding the county should provide incentives? Is there anything that the county can provide incentives on?
I don't know. The answer to the first part of that is I don't think there's anything else in here as far as incentives. The second question is, can the county provide incentives? I don't know the answer to that.
That's why I assumed that's why this was crossed out, probably. But, no, I agree, we can bring this one back. So say 83.2, the county should attract.
I would cross out provide and incentives and replace both of those with the word continue.
I agree with
That
that.
would be my proposed change.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm good with that too.
Anybody opposed to that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Cross out the word provide and incentives and replace those with the word continue.
I agree with that one as well. Just point of note, PJ, I agree with you on that. When you said you went back and looked, I have a lot of hand notes when we were going through that section, and I have nothing on 3.2 either. So I was just double checking my notes originally.
I didn't see anything.
So yeah,
A lot on 3.4, but the next one, but yeah, 84.
Is there anybody else from the audience that would like to come up and speak? Please come forward and state your name. And then if you have specifics to go through the document, please list those as well.
Hi, my name's Carla Ray Marshall. I'm a longtime member or longtime resident of Chesapa, Rapid City here. I am an enrolled member of the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe, and I grew up there in Eagle Butte, Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe area. I haven't had a whole lot of time to read through the whole comprehensive plan, but my questions are, so this is a draft right now, and you did have public comments. So when you make these changes to this now, are you going to open it up for some more public comments, or is this the end here?
No, this is not the end. So there's been roughly 30 landowner meetings and public meetings regarding the document. The document doesn't get finalized until it goes to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay.
And so we're making a recommendation, this board or this commission will be making a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. And then PJ explained a little bit ago that it was re-advertised in the paper and that there will be additional comments received
Okay.
and considered by the board.
So is this last public comment, is there a deadline for that, or has that already passed? Or is it
PJ, can you
open
help me
up
with that
again?
one?
Hi, PJ Conover, Director of Planning Department. The public can make comment all the way up and into even after the board makes even when the board makes a decision on the comprehensive plan, because there will be a period after that for comment. And the public can make a comment anytime they want if you just go to the comprehensive plan website, view to 2040, and on the right-hand side, the little tabs, you can just click on one of those and submit those comments anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And those go straight to myself, our consultant, and then they get sent out to the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners. So almost instantaneously.
Okay, so the consultant, is that independent consultant that?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Matrix Design Group is their name.
Matrix?
Yes.
Okay. Another comment I would like to make is that, so since that's been, so Rapid City does need, or Pennington County does need a ordinance on hard rock mining. Is that the case? I'm also a steering committee member for the Western Mining Action Network, which is a national organization. And there's several members throughout the United States and Canada that that deal with hard rock mining, toxic hard rock mining. And when I think it was Catherine here that mentioned about anecdotals, stories about the devastating effects that mining has on water and people and wildlife and livestock. We can look at past mining issues here in the Black Hills and South Dakota. If you look at Riley Pass Mine, do you know where Riley Pass Mine is?
Slim Buttes, I know.
That's Hardin County. And I mean, back in the 40s, they found uranium, and they found it because the United States Air Force did a probably low fly over the rivers and stuff. So that's how they found the uranium. So they started doing mom and pop places out there to get the yellow cake out. Well, then they got, got a little bit more sophisticated under they came under the 1872 mining law. When they started mining the uranium up there, all that water from Harding County goes into the Little Morrow. I lived right along the Little Morrow in a little tiny community called Iron Lightning on our reservation. But from Harding County all the way down to the Missouri River, that water was contaminated. So the ranchers, their cattle started losing weight and stuff, probably back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And so the ranchers were giving them supplements. Well, come to find out, it was the water. So they were subsidized by the United States government to dig deep wells. The Riley Pass mine is a Superfund site now. It's going to take, they didn't start a Superfund until like 50 years later, but it's going to take them 20 years to reclaim it, and it will never be reclaimed. If you look at Lead, you look at Homestake Gold Mine, you look at that place up in Lead, that's a huge open pit. If you look at Wharf Mining, who their parent company is a Canadian company. Wharf Mine is huge up there. If you can Google map it, and it's like, from the 80s, it was like this. Now it's huge up there. And so anytime we do anything here in the Hasapa, we are affecting everybody downstream to the Missouri River. Our land is also along the Cheyenne River on the southwest side or south of our reservation line there. But we've had notices put out saying don't eat too much fish because of the mercury, and that's all comes down from hard rock mining. So I think we really need to take into consideration, what we do here affects everything. It's like it flows. So I would hope that we take in consideration how we have to protect the water here in order for the ranchers, the agriculture, the whole gamut. It all plays into this. What we do to one, we do to another. So I think I want to thank you for taking this into consideration and clearing up some of these questions. I'm hoping to get more people, to make comments on this, to start looking it over. And I'm glad you're considering doing the hard rock mining, because we look at Polymont up in Canada. We look at Brazil. I mean, they had these huge dams, mining dams. I mean, even in Edgemont, back in the 50s, I think there was a dam that broke and went into the Angostura. And if anything comes up on gold mining or something above Pactola, like Carol was saying, it's going to be bad for us. We look at the 1972 flood, how fast that came through, So I think we really need to protect our water now, protect it as much as we can for future generations. We all love our grandchildren, and our great-great-grandchildren are going to be here soon. So we only got like 50 years, and, there's day zero out there, and it's there now, like in India. So we need to protect as much as we can here, and I think, being more supportive of environmentally friendly businesses, then will help us in the future too. So I really appreciate you being here, and welcome to Lakota territory. Thank you.
For your comments. Is there any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead. You go first. You go second.
Okay. Thank you for those comments and for all the public comments we've had on this issue over the years. I don't know if we would have done as good of a job as we could have done if it wasn't for all the public comments on this. I want to just add succinctly to this topic that the costs of a mining operation gone bad can easily be substantially more than the economic benefits of the mining operations. I think that's a succinct way of summarizing this issue. So thanks again.
Okay, go ahead, Floyd.
My comment is just for information, what they got approved for Rochford and stuff is for test drilling. So mining's not actually starting. That's why we're starting the hard rock mining now, because it's just in the testing stage. So the process takes years before a permit gets approved. But that's why the commission is moving forward with hard rock mining to review it and so forth. So there's plenty of time. It's not like it's going to explode by the end of this year or next year. But not only this planning commission, but also the board of commissioners see the need for it and are starting to work on that ordinance. And so we have taken hours and hours of public comment on just the aggregate mining industry. And I'm sure it's going to end up going the same way when we come to the hard rock. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to be respectful and considerate and have plenty of public comment and time for that too.
Okay, go ahead.
Brittany Molitor, Environmental Planning Supervisor. Holly and I have been working on the hard rock mining, and there should be an update within the next week or two on the progress of that. So, okay.
Thank you.
Yes, it will be, and my understanding is that there will be a web page that will be available with the recommended ordinance, and then they can make comments on that ordinance through that web page and through the commission office.
Just a follow-up, Mr. Chairman. The reason why they're doing, for those that are out in the audience now, doing it a little bit different this time is this way to get more public comment. So you can make, just as this young lady was talking about, being able to get to the website and being able to go directly for this comprehensive plan. The commission wanted to do something that everybody could attend and make those comments, and then we can gather that in and make a report on that. So that's what the intent of, as what she just mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Actually, let's hold up. Ma'am, do you have any comments? I want to make sure that everyone gets heard. Yes.
Good morning. My name's Julie Santella, and I had made some written and verbal comments before, and so I just pulled up that comment matrix that's dated June 20th, and just wanted to ask about a few things. Before I get to that, the first thing I wanted to raise was we've been having a conversation about the cost of when some of these operations go poorly. And I do also want to point out that it's not just anecdotal evidence of when mines go poorly. It is documented in scientific literature, the ways that acid leaching happens after gold operations and like what's happening up at Gilt Edge and other things. So it's not just anecdotal stories. It's documented through established scientific methods to show what happens when spills occur. And so I was wondering, I don't have the language at the ready for this, so this might not be specific enough, but I was wondering if, and I'm looking at NCR 6, that we've been discussing, this goal specific to mining operations. I was wondering if it were possible to add something about reclamation funds into that piece, something requiring companies to, and part of what was in the comment matrix was that what I suggested wasn't specific enough. But there seems to be a fair amount of guiding language in this plan. There's some things that are more specific, but there's a lot of the county will encourage or the county will do its best to promote and those kinds of things. And that would be my first comment, is to add something in here about requiring companies to demonstrate that they have adequate funds, reclamation funds, for when something might go wrong. That would be my first comment.
Okay, so your comment is well taken. The purpose of this document is a visionary document, and it's those specifics themselves end up being in the ordinances.
Right,
So the,
right.
the nuts and bolts of the what's required by company XYZ if they come in and do something is really taken care of in the ordinance. And so the specifics in this document are not there. For the most part on, those types of items that you're discussing.
Cool. Yeah, I thought that too, which is why I was a little confused when my comments were replied to with this doesn't have specifics, because I thought that kind of the purpose of the document was to be a little bit more general. So that's my first comment, is to ask for there to be language in this goal related to reclamation funds.
May I?
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chair?
Kathy.
Yeah, and also, the precedent has been set with Ordinance 320, which is it's not the so-called hard rock, it's the aggregate and so on. In there, it does have the provision that bonds, a financial surety can be required. So that precedent has been set through that ordinance. But also, these so-called hard rock mines, the real permitting of these is at the state level. And those are major permit documents and procedures. And the state, they will, they just automatically require bonding that has to be put forth. And that bonding requirement has strengthened over the since I've been involved in it, maybe like the last 30 years maybe. And so that's where, there's nothing to say that the county can't also require bonding, but the big bonds for both the use of cyanide, which is the water quality issue, and the reclamation happens at the state level.
Definitely. And I do understand that, and that there are multiple levels of, different jurisdictional powers that enter in at different places. I guess as a person, I'm a PhD candidate and I study mining in the Black Hills. So I've spent a lot of time studying these different projects that have happened in the past and trying to track ongoing permitting processes. And I feel concerned about the quality of what we call natural resources in this area for lots of reasons. And my stance would be, why not add a line in the comprehensive plan? It would only make that requirement a little bit more robust. That's all. I'm glad you brought up the aggregate ordinance too, because I wanted to raise that as well. If you scroll down a little bit to my next comment, actually, let's see, what is it? It's number 109 in the comment matrix. I talk about that aggregate ordinance because, and I'm really glad, I don't remember now who referenced the comment period that happened, the public engagement that happened around that aggregate mining ordinance. Because something that came out that was really strong in that ordinance that I would love to also see in this comprehensive plan is this language requiring tribal historic preservation officers to be notified. So there is precedent at the county level to include that kind of notification. And I see, so it's kind of, this comment that I made is sort of two-pronged. First, require more public involvement generally, and I see that there was a discussion of the possibility of including some language around that, but it looks like no change was made, so I wanted to ask about that. There's nothing now in NCR 6 regarding public comment. I really appreciate what, again, I didn't write down who said this, but someone was mentioning, I think it was Commissioner Johnson, you were mentioning that there is a fairly wide breadth of public opinion with regard to mining in the area. I think that's true. I think then why not open these processes up for more public engagement? And I understand that that that's what's happening right now. I understand that that's what's making it possible for me to speak in front of you. And again, as a guiding document that presents a vision for the county, why not add a little bit of language there that says that the county will encourage, or and what, or even that line that's in this matrix, that it's a priority of Pennington County that public comment is incorporated into the creations of ordinances, connected to mining operations in the county or something like that. So I wanted to ask why that line couldn't be included, wanted to encourage that it would be. And then again, citing the precedent of that aggregate ordinance that requires tribal historic preservation officers to be contacted. I would really like to see that in the comprehensive plan as well. So those can be two related comments.
Okay, thank you. PJ, can you answer this question? Certainly in the mining ordinance, there's requirements for notifications, correct?
Correct.
And then normally there's environmental studies that are done ahead of mining that require clearances through various. I mean, I remember being a consultant and doing any sort of project in public areas, and they always required environmental things. But if it's private property, that may or may not happen. Do we know if those requirements are in the ordinance?
You want to talk about it specifically?
Are you speaking of like cultural resource, like
Yes.
SHPO?
Is that included in 320?
I do believe it's required on federal lands, irregardless. That is a requirement. Under the hard rock mining, I believe that is going to be recommended, that SHPO clearances have been done. The last mining permit that went through you guys, they did do a cultural resource study on that, and they did get a SHPO letter, a 106 clearance on their activity. So it is being done. I think it's a recommended, and then if that information is required, I know that this commission and the Board of Commissioners do have some leeway in making those as an additional requirement. If it's areas that could be potentially sensitive, I know the planning director also in 320 can require additional information based on comments.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Kathy.
I think it would, me personally, I think it would be fine to add something to section NCR 6 that talks about that we want to continue the practice of the public engagement and tribal engagement, because there's many things in here that are already happening. And it's always been a little bit of a mystery to me why certain things that are already happening are included here, and certain things that are already happening, we decide we don't need it. So I think that there's certainly, it would not be an unusual add to have something added to this, even though it's already happening. So I would be fine with putting a line here just to call it out as something that's important to us.
I like your comment. How did you word that? Continued tribal and
To continue to encourage public
tribal
outreach,
engagement?
public and tribal outreach or involvement, or whatever the word would be. But
Again, given the precedent in that aggregate ordinance, this is, public engagement is one thing and SHPO engagement is one thing. TIPO notification is different, and that already is in the aggregate ordinance. And so I would like to see both, that the reference to public engagement and specifically referencing tribal notification and involvement.
I think this document's a guide. And so
The guide, yeah.
by what she's saying, by adding it is in iterating the outreach. The ordinance is exactly where you need to be and where you need to be talking to, because that's where the nuts and bolts are going to be. And so this hearing is, this is just guiding. So I like her comment on that. I think we could add something along that lines in there, but I think your guys' biggest concerns are going to become when that ordinance comes up. That's when the public comment and the changes coming up at this point on this document it's kind of hard to do something on the fly is what we're doing, because I don't like doing that, because I like to think about things a little bit before we do that. But I think some small, unless you got something specific, I think sit back and take some time and write them down and do as you just did. And then when it comes to the commission, if there's something specific, be more specific, as they said, what you'd like to see. Then they can make that decision, yes or no.
Great. And yeah, I think I understand the kind of general, this is general and the specifics will come in the ordinances. And what Commissioner Johnson is suggesting would address my recommendation, which is just to have a general line referencing public engagement and tribal input.
Okay.
Where would you like that to fall?
NCR 6.
Well, I'm just writing here, just, and perhaps we could just say NCR 6.6, create a new item, a new goal, and here's my draft right now. The county shall continue to encourage public and tribal engagement in ordinance development and permitting.
I have a question. We're putting this in a specific mining section, but does this not apply to everything?
I would agree. That was going to be my
Well,
comment.
I don't disagree with that too, but I do think that there's such a strong focus on the mining part that having it here is not a bad thing. But I agree with you that it's really a broader issue. But,
So where would that fall in chapter 4? If we're going to put it and apply to everything, go ahead, Travis.
Well, I have a question. I mean, I know this is a general document for the entire county, but it seems like we're talking about something that would be more impactful on large-scale mining operations, such as, obviously businesses and companies. How is that statement going to impact, in generalities, for private landowners? That's where I'm going to be kind of concerned with something like that. Getting in tribal involvement with private landowners who are doing their own private mining or their own private, not for resale or anything of that nature. That's where I'm going to get a little edgy on it, because if we're bringing tribal influence into someone, having to have tribal influence when someone's doing their own stuff on their own property for their own personal, then I'm going to get a little concerned with it. Because then it violates our rights if you're having to bring someone else in before I can do something on my own property. That's why I just want to ask, what's the overall arching, how is that going to impact when we're talking about this? I get it, the nuts and bolts are going to be done in the ordinances, but that's something to, if the county is, if as we move forward, if the ordinances are reflecting a general, everything has to go through tribal to include private property owners, that's going to be a big concern.
I think, Travis, this is just a guide, and that's the way I'm kind of looking at it. So if somebody comes through and reads it, who as a private landowner, they see that it turns on a light that says, maybe I should, maybe I don't need to, but it makes them aware. I think the way Kathy wanted to have that put in there, I think it just brings the awareness of what's there. The ordinance itself is going to address everything else. This is the guide that if somebody comes into town or a new person, and they start reading through this, it turns on a light, I think. Sonny looks like he's ready to.
Well, I would like to say we have a tribal member here, right? So maybe we should get her comment. She's raising her hand.
Thank you. What I would think is that, so what I'm seeing is construction all over the place, and I'm thinking to myself, my ancestors were here for thousands of years, and this was their ceremonial home, and there are ceremonial places or artifacts out there. So do these construction permits and stuff, if a private landowner is starting to dig for a basement or whatever, and they come across something that could be considered as an artifact, what kind of ordinance does Pennington County have for them to say stop and we need to bring in a TIPO, a tribal historical preservation officer, or a SHPO, you know. So maybe that would just encourage them to, or become aware that where they're digging, they may find artifacts. They may find bones from from one of the old West guys out there. We don't know. We don't know what the Black Hills was like way back in, when Deadwood first started and stuff. So, well, we do because of history, but at the same time, so if we are putting the word tribal in the ordinances, that gives you, um, that gives you, that tells us that you're recognizing that we existed, we are here, and that we are respected, and that our ancestors or whatever artifacts that might be out there are respected. Same with, settlers or whatever. So I think it would be a good idea to include that, and then you might want to explain it a little bit further, say on the lines of private landowners are digging for a shed. If they come across something that looks like it might be questionable, then to, take precautions, I guess. Would that kind of help? I don't know. It's up to
Yes.
I think that's where Kathy was going with that comment.
Yeah,
Having that comment makes you aware of what's.
right. Yeah.
And then the ordinances are gonna address the contacting and that type of stuff.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Kathy, are you still thinking that would be, then fall into NCR-6, or would that fall in a different location in the document?
Well, I could, really go either way, but I think that, I think it's okay to leave it in 6.6. And then if we want to kind of revisit some of this broader context and have something else, then I think that could also be done. But I think, leaving it right here under mining fits and suits the discussion at hand.
If I could interject real quick, I think we've digressed a couple times, and we've got the tribal topic, we've got the public input topic. We're treating it as one big thing, but maybe they're separate things that belong in different places.
I'm just trying to understand, take the Ms. Santella's comment in here, and if there's a place that it makes sense to have, because the document is a vision document, a guiding document, I don't think that there's any problem adding something in here that says that, we encourage the commission to continue, requiring public input and those types of items into the document.
Yeah. I guess how I view this is, to encourage public and tribal engagement in ordinance development and permitting. It's like, so you make sure that the notices get sent out so that people are aware of what's going on, that there's sufficient and adequate meeting times, places and at times where you can, really hear from people, and that there's an expectation of having substantive discussion about concerns and questions, during these processes. But, precisely the framework and the constraints and around it, that would be, as you've said a couple of times, Lloyd, in the ordinances.
Yeah.
But I guess I view this as just to encourage that we'd make sure that we could get everyone at the table when we were doing these kind of activities.
I don't disagree with anything that's being said. I would think that maybe a couple options. Either it appear in every chapter,
Okay.
in very general form, because it's applicable to every chapter, or we can formulate something for maybe chapter 2 is the most appropriate overarching chapter, even though it's more about vision statements and
That's where I was
describing,
looking,
so.
to see where something like that could be inserted. And so Kathy, your comment about how you phrase that could be added basically as a section within plan, within the,
And
within
that's,
section 2.
and I'd be certainly okay
Yeah.
with that, and if we did that in two, which I agree is an kind of an overarching, kind of sets it up, then it doesn't need to be repeated in 6,
Okay.
from
So
my perspective.
can you just restate that then for the,
Well, the way I have it drafted right now is that the county shall continue to encourage public and tribal engagement in ordinance development and permitting.
that can just be added into section 2, however Matrix thinks that they can fit it in there? Okay. All right. Are there any other comments? I see we have another gentleman in the audience. Come on up.
Morning, Commissioners. My name is Rick Bell. I'm a resident here in Rapid City. I'm also chair of the Black Hills chapter of Dakota Rural Action. Sorry, I just found out about this meeting this morning, so I'm a little bit late, and I don't know where you're at in the agenda. I specifically, if it's not a problem, to go back to section 4.5. If you've already gone through that, I apologize. I noticed that something was added here, speaking about mining, that the county should continue in 4.5. The county should continue to support major economic drivers, such as, but not limited to, mining and logging. And I believe in 4.5.
Oh, ED 4, 4.5.
Oh, sorry,
Okay,
ED.
got it.
Yep.
Okay, so
Gotta get
page 4.6.
And again, I apologize if we're
That's okay.
backtracking
No,
a little,
no.
but again, it has to do with this issue. And I saw that I think this came from something that Deb Hadcock wanted to put in here. And I believe it's a little bit kowtowing to the to the political aspects of here, because I would disagree that mining and logging are major economic drivers in this area. And again, I think you as a commission, we're talking about a vision, something that where do we want the county to be 20 years from now, right? 2020, 2040. Do we really want to have more mining and logging in the Black Hills in Pennington County? That's really a question. I mean, I think that the commission, the county, can take a stance on what we want to see. This is a vision of where we want to be in 20 years. Do we want to be having more big open pits and dealing with all the remnants of the existing mining? It's one thing to talk about this. And I did a little statistics, and if you'll just indulge me for a moment here. The agricultural output in the Black Hills in 2014 was the latest data I could find. It was 790 million. Tourism in the first 10 months of 18 was 413. And if you extrapolate that to 12 months, we're talking 483 million.
I'm sorry, sir, excuse me.
Yes.
480 million what?
483 million that has been expended, sales that have been expended in the tourism area.
Oh, you're talking about dollars?
Yes, I'm talking about dollars.
Okay, thank you.
$400 million, sorry.
Thank you.
790 million in agricultural output. And the only existing gold mining operation in the Black Hills, the Brome mine, the one near Terry Peak, sorry, is 126 million. So, in other words, traditional agriculture and tourism together bring in about 1.3 million. Mining is only 10% of that. And if you add the fact that the Gilt Edge mine, which is a Superfund site, is being cleaned up and it's about 200 million. I guess if you talk about the actual mining plus the cleanup of mining, we're talking about some significant numbers. But I wouldn't say those are major economic drivers in the Black Hills. So, I'm not sure why this got added in here. It's like we want to encourage more mining and logging. That's how I read it. And so, this is in the section on supporting the growth of existing industries. And we do talk about tourism. We don't talk about agriculture. And it just seems to me that we're putting too much emphasis on that. And as a commission, again, I say your vision of where you want this county to be in 20 years, you ought to put the focus on what we want to encourage, not what we want to to have here. And I'm diametrically opposed to additional mining, especially open pit mining, because I think, we've got these outside foreign companies coming in wanting to, do this, and then we've seen historically, they go away and we've got another Superfund site on our hands. So I just don't think it's appropriate to be putting more language in here. And this got changed and added, again, with all due respect, it just seems out of place. So I would just like to say to strike 4.5. And again, you guys have the opportunity to edit this thing. We're not quite to the end of the line yet before it goes on to the full commission, I understand. And I just think you ought to refocus on where we want to be in 20 years. Do we want to be having more mining in this area, or do we want to encourage more tourism? And I would say this focus here in the section ED4 is a little misplaced, because if one could read this to think that that's where we want to be in 20 years. And so that's my 2 cents worth, gentlemen and ladies.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I have a question. You mentioned how much was it for tourism, and you said it was extrapolated?
Yeah, the only data I could find was 10 months of 2018.
And how much was that for that 10 months?
413.7. So I just extracted that 12 tenths to be a full year, and I said 482.6 would have been the full 2018 1 year of data. And the last numbers that I could find for agriculture was 790 million in 2014. And then 2017 was the one operating gold mine. They reported sales of 126 million. So just put things in perspective. What are our major industries in the Black Hills? It's tourism and agriculture. I think this section should focus on saying that's what we want to do more of. And now we've added this 4.5, the county should continue to support, and it's the word major economic drivers that really bothers me. So having done a little homework, I wanted to present it to the commission and suggest that we limit that 4.5 a little bit.
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
You don't think there should be some diversity? I mean, I talk about putting all my eggs in the basket of tourism or all my eggs in the basket of agriculture. I mean, granted, there needs to be controls, et cetera.
Right.
But to me, I like to encourage other types of industries as well.
Well, I think the Black Hills could really diversify industrially, and maybe this isn't the section on it because it says existing industry. So I agree.
Sure.
We need to diversify, but to me, there's too much emphasis here, especially with that word major.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. And I hear what you're saying. I just wanted to.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
make that
Go ahead, Lloyd.
comment.
Rick, I absolutely respect what you just said. I mean, it makes sense. I think when you take that one sentence out of context, you're right. I don't like it. I'm going, that doesn't sound right. But if you start reading through this, it says the county should allow development of natural resources. Natural resources. I worked in the timber industry for 27 years as worked at Maryland, byproducts of the forest industry. I just come back from Washington, where they're doing outstanding work thinning the forests up there and working with the forest industry to get those things done, use the smaller timbers in order to help encourage the growth of the forest. And so I think there's a lot of misconceptions of how this went. Knowing Ms. Hadcock, if she added that in there, it's because she added that in there because we just went through a lot of work with the aggregate mining. So that is part of, we've heard hours of testimony of how, if our roads prices could end up going up and testimony on that. I don't think it was meant to be hindering or trying to support or to promote one or the other, but to recognize that they are there. So that's why when I started reading through that, I definitely get, as you said, we need to be diversified and so forth. But as you read through that, I think our forest industry alone is not just for logging, for housing, like a lot of people think. It's not. When we just had the Black Hills National Forest, an old ranger come through and tell us the history of the Black Hills and how way back when it was so desolate because the pine beetles and the fires had destroyed areas, and how proper management has brought the Black Hills back to where it is today. So I think we just got to be very careful when we go to change. I think if that was a change, I would encourage you, because you mentioned her name, talk with Deb, and when it comes to the county commission, sit down with her and have that discussion with her.
And I intend to do that, but given that we're here in the process, and I appreciate your comments, Commissioner LaCroix, in terms of logging, I think we do need to manage our forest. My final suggestion is just to strike the word major and put other economic drivers such as, but not limited to, mining and logging. And then I think, as Ms. Rundy, mentioned, we're talking about the diversity, but again, that's my final comment on it.
I understand that major part.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I got a comment on this. And you may be right in that aspect of giving it a broader perspective other than just where it says mining and logging. However, I do have some 2017 numbers for you for the Black Hills, 2017 economic region industry table. Mining, actually, let's start with agriculture and forestry. They actually lump agriculture and forestry, fishing and hunting together for the GRP, which is 322.213 million for 2017. Mining was, let me find it again, mining, quarrying, and oil and gas extraction. That was 189.754 million in 2017. So they're still pretty comparable. It's about half the rate there. But you mentioned Terry Peak was 126. So this was, this shows that the mining area impact is higher than that Terry Peak number that you had of 123
That was
million.
just the only single mine that I could find that I knew was an active mine. I just took their sales number. So we can we can dissect all the numbers to death. I'm just trying to give a general perspective on the magnitude of agriculture and tourism in the Black Hills compared to that. And I don't think it's major. So that's where I just like to end, and appreciate the time, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Go ahead, Catherine.
I mean, I'm perfectly all right with striking the word major and just put other. I mean, I think that, I mean, as I remember, the context here was that, we talk about, we talk about ag, we have value added ag. We talk about,
Tourism.
and we just want, and tourism, and we just want to remember, some of these historical industries that do contribute. And so I really don't think the word major adds anything, really. I mean, because I don't really think that was the context we were discussing it. So I think actually changing the word major to other is in closer keeping with the discussion that preceded this, in my recollection. So I'm all right with changing it to other.
I am as well. Any other concerns from the board changing the word major to other? Okay, PJ, you have that noted?
I have it. And before we leave this page, I did notice, let me go back to there if you don't mind, Mr. Chair. Next to the new ED44 and ED45, the icons for which parts of the county were not added in.
Oh, yeah.
but I would suggest it'd be all three for each one.
I'm good with that. Anybody have concerns with that?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I'd like to propose, before we go any further, take a little break, please.
5-minute recess. Was that long enough?
Long enough.
Work for everyone? Okay.
I'd make a motion.
Second.
Motion and second to take a 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene at, let's say 11:06.
Vote, motion and second.
Oh, all those in favor? I'm
Aye.
sorry.
Aye.
Signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Thanks.
Thank you.
We can go ahead and get started again, and when Sandy comes in, we can incorporate.
And make a motion to reconvene.
Second.
Motion and second to reconvene the meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. We're reconvened. We are still on item number 19, Ordinance Amendment 19-01. We finished up with public comment. What I'd like to do then, moving forward, and I'd like to do this, I'll be pushing to make this happen, is to basically go through each chapter and see if anybody else had some items to pick up, and then Kathy, we can pick up your items at the same time, and then PJ, if you have anything, go ahead and interject as well.
Sure.
Did anybody have any items in chapter 1?
I'll just say I agree with Kathy's take on page 1-1.
I don't have any concerns with Kathy's item on page 1-1 either. Anybody else? Okay, so we're moving on. Changes to chapter 1 would be the incorporation of Kathy's comment on page 1-1. Moving on to chapter 2. Were there any? And I tabbed my pages, so I'll be flipping here as we go, but. Okay. No changes to chapter 2.
Sir?
Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I believe that's where we're going to incorporate what was discussed earlier with Commissioner Johnson's comments about including public and tribal comments. So
Yes,
that will be
sir.
the change too.
That, agreed. Thank you for making that note. Chapter 3. So I saw on page 3-10, it looked like they were starting to type something and made a space or then left off. So on page 3-10 under floodplains, there are various floodplains and floodways designated throughout the county. See chapter 9 in existing conditions report F. And then there's a large space or locations. I guess I would just ask that am I missing something?
No, you're not. I think that just is what came up through, because this is an edited document, and as you see the lines on the left side that are vertical, it's still showing the editing marks. If you look at the final version that incorporates all the edits,
Okay.
there's no space. But I actually have that commented as well.
Okay. Any other comments to chapter 3?
Well, my comment was on LUH 1.1, or 1.2. I think that shall should be should.
And I'm okay making that change.
Yes.
Does anybody else have any strong opinions one way or the other?
No.
Okay. Incorporating Catherine's change from shall to should. Any other items in chapter 3?
Just a comment, sir.
Go ahead, PJ.
I'm just trying to find it here. Oh, okay. On comment matrix, item numbers, or page number 7, item number 25, we're talking about plan unit developments. There were some comments about why staff is looking to no longer honor plan unit honor the existing plan unit developments, but not create any new ones. It was actually a suggestion from Matrix Design Group, and it's up on the board, the comments, is that plan unit developments by their very nature are individualized and create some confusion and headaches is like the Trailwood Village you guys had today. That was created years ago, and there's hundreds of lots in there. And the reason for the special consideration is for anybody to make a change has to send out certified return receipt letters to everybody inside of that, which would be cost prohibitive for people to make changes. But with the suggestion from Matrix is that if people want to create a development, because we are updating the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance, so we hopefully will be more in line with what developers and what the future is for the county, but that any of those specific changes be done through conditional use permits, because those are actually governed under state law.
Okay.
But and again, just to reiterate, the existing plan unit developments will stay intact until they, at some point, maybe revert back to their original zoning districts.
Or dissolve or something along their lines.
Right.
Okay.
But in the flip side of that is someone to develop a PUD for a large subdivision, it does offer the developer the opportunity for creativity and imagination. It actually says that in the ordinance. So it does allow flexibility of a developer outside, in line with our ordinance, but not exactly in step with it. So we would be taking that opportunity away from developers.
So,
Go ahead, Kathy.
yeah, so this then includes, there will not be any new PUDs, or they just will simply be kind of discouraged?
We were not going to include PUD as a future
zoning
land use
category.
option.
I see.
The only ones that would stay are the ones that would be existing prior to the adoption of the new comp plan.
Yes, okay.
Excuse me, could there still be a plan development overlay versus zoning?
There could be, but if you're going to do we do that now
Sure.
with PUDs, but if we were to do that, then we would just want to keep PUDs in as an
see.
option. But that is an option. That's a good option.
Well, have you had any public comment on this point, getting rid of the PUDs?
No, we have not. No, it's been more of planning commissioners commenting and staff just talking about it because we kind of know the intricacies of it.
Right, yes. Well, it just seems to me that, when this goes up for the next round of review, it's going to be clear that that's no longer included, right?
Yes, I hope it was clear now too. If not,
Right,
I'll
and
have
so
to
it
change
seems
that.
to me that we'll see if people, developers and whatnot, if they are bothered by that or not.
Yeah, I think there will always be a need. We may not be able to perceive the need today, but somebody will come up with something, and then we're going to have to go back and change things, so.
But I don't understand, because on page 3-5, PUD is listed.
It is because we still have to honor the existing ones.
I see.
Go back there.
Yes, of course. So where does it specifically say that there won't be any new ones?
Oh, I don't know that answer.
Okay, well, I'll look for it. I just want to make sure that that's clear, because that is something important that people that are developers and so on, we need to make it very clear to them that this isn't going to be an option anymore.
That the existing ones are grandfathered in and not.
Yes, exactly. So so I don't have a thought one way or another whether it's right or wrong to get rid of them, but we need to make this really clear.
No, I got that point. Got it.
Okay, yeah. Because I'm not seeing it as I just paged through, but it no doubt is here somewhere.
That's all I had, sir.
Okay. So then we are on to chapter 4.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, sir.
I skipped one of my notes in here for chapter 2, if you don't mind. It's just a placement of pages.
Go ahead.
Page 2.2 starts out with the Black Hills focus area, and then 2.3, 2.4, and 2.5, I believe, are the maps, and then you've got the rest of the focus areas being explained of what they are. Wouldn't it be better to have all three explanations ahead and then the maps behind?
Agree.
Because it kind of, it's like it split it, and it's like you read about Black Hills focus area, and then you go through three maps, and then you read about the other two areas.
I don't see any reason why you can't refer to the figure and the figure page in the section you're in, but list those sections first and then the following maps behind. I don't have I'm not opposed to that change. Anybody else?
Yeah, it just seemed weird reading about Black Hills focus area, then seeing all three maps, and then reading about the Central Pennington focus area and the Eastern Plains focus area, and then you had to back up to get to those maps.
Okay,
I agree.
so small formatting change then in chapter 2. And we were through chapter 3 and we are on chapter 4. I had some questions in chapter 4, and when he started talking about the dollars and the economic impact, I guess I wanted to bring these items up, but if we're all grasping from stuff on various web pages and that kind of thing, we're probably never going to land on the same page. But it says in here that in 2018, tourism generated approximately $166 million in revenue. And so that wasn't anywhere close to what Mr. Bell had indicated. So that's a question that's concerning. And then if you flip on the next page, it says that the National Guard is also an economic driver with a total annual economic impact of 172 billion with a B. And I looked at those two figures and I thought, can that be right? A billion, 172 billion. That's the impact to this county. Didn't seem like maybe that number is even in the ballpark. So I guess my request for Matrix would be to cross-check and somewhat define these numbers that they have listed, such that the impact was this, and then in the 176 million they talk about in revenues. Okay, I understand what that means, but
Yeah, page 13 comment matrix is where it came from. Andrew Bussey's numbers, that's what was adopted.
okay.
Right there in the top two, 41, 42.
Is there any way
But we
that-
can go back and have them double check all that, absolutely. Well, 41, I don't know about 42. We can definitely have them check it.
Yeah, but you know how they do these economic impact? They take direct labor, the amount of money they pay salaried people, the amount of supplies and so on that they buy, amount of other things, money they spend, and they multiply it by 7, typically, because they think that money turns over 7 times.
Oh.
And that's how they come up with impact. So it's really always these big, big numbers. It's not, it's derived from actual revenues or actual expenditures, really. But, and then I'll bet on the tourism, it generates 166 million in revenue. I'll bet that's just sales tax. I bet it's not really the money they collect and so on. I'll bet that sounds like a state number or something, then that's the sales tax they generate. So I think it's a real apples and oranges deal, the different numbers that they are quoting here.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Just to add to, I was looking at that 2017 economic impact of the Black Hills, the government side of it, it doesn't break it out to military, but the numbers that it shows for that particular document is 2 billion GRP. So
172 billion is maybe a little high.
I would think it's probably a little high. If you factored out that 2 billion here, you factored it by 7, you multiply it by 7, you're talking about, that's 14 billion
exactly
impact
right.
maybe.
Yeah.
It looks like, I'm sorry.
It'd just be good to figure out where they're getting these numbers from so we have most accurate numbers and see if we're looking at the same charts for both
Yeah.
venues.
I think they're pulling it from this report because they mention it here in the response. And I think they're pulling it from here, but I don't know specifically what page or how to navigate this document.
What's the state's entire budget?
Oh, it's
4 or 5 billion?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a few
just a couple
billion.
billion, a few billion.
So we're saying the National Guard and Ellsworth are have an economic impact of 172 billion just in this
I
county?
agree. It seems a little
Seems high.
inflated. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's. Anyway, my request is that Matrix cross-check that number. So
I just did a word search for billion and this is what came up. First hit.
So that's visitor impact is 3.98 billion. That's how much they spent.
Like a billion appears 6 times in this document, but let's see, this is the first one. Total GDP.
298 million in tax dollars generated.
And then the visitor spending,
3.38.
That's a little small. I can't read those.
yeah, so I was trying,
2.65,
You know,
3.65.
I mean, this is really a good point that this needs to be right and you have to should double check. But I think in addition to that, being a little more clear, let's say, for example, tourism generates approximately 166 million in revenue. If that's sales tax, they should say it's sales tax. If it's,
Correct. I'd like to
know,
know what the numbers are.
that's right, they
Right.
need to be a little bit more
Yeah, I
precise
agree.
here as to what they're really, um, really,
Re- Referencing.
yeah, exactly.
And it needs to be consistent so that you can have an apples to apples
Yeah,
comparison.
that's right. Yeah.
I'm wondering what the real value is in having specific numbers at all.
I'm with you.
Yeah, and that's a
We
good
could
point
do
too.
something like a list of, like we have top employers here on page 4-2, maybe top revenue, but without actually citing specific numbers. And how useful are those going to be over the next 10 to 20 years anyway?
And I have a really interesting question. So, this is, and I don't know if y'all caught this too. If you're on page 4-3, the Ellsworth Air Force Base, Ellsworth Air Force Base's impact is over 300 million, but the Guard impact is 172 billion, but the active duty base is doing most. I'm not saying anything bad about the Guard. I'm just saying we're constantly operating as an active duty Air Force base, a little different than a Guard unit, and maybe I just don't see it. So I think it could be maybe it was a typo for a million instead of a billion.
it
I think so.
it came from Andrew Bussey's comment again, but it could be a typo, but we can definitely
Yeah,
have
double
them
check.
check it, yep.
Okay.
I would rather see these numbers taken out of the paragraphs and put in a table like we have for top employers, instead top economic drivers. That's my view.
That's kind of like the document I'm looking at, actually, the one I've got online. It's got the employers, their category, and then it kind of shows what their GRP is for 2017. Maybe that is a better way to display it, so you kind of get an overview of each category and what it does for the region or for the county. I'm not opposed to that, Sonny.
So you'd like to see a chart for top economic drivers, similar to the top employers?
Yeah, and perhaps just remove the numbers from those paragraphs. As it seems we're discussing, it's kind of tricky to narrow down such numbers to begin with.
So they would list that below either that, or they would, maybe there's just an economic driver paragraph that's written with a small table that has those in there.
Could it not be added or just placed right below or near table 4.1?
It could be. Yep.
I mean, you've already got them listed as the top employers. Why not put their impact?
Okay.
What do you think, Sonny?
I agree. That table can be fit in here anywhere, just at the end maybe.
I think it'd be difficult to combine top employers and their impact because, for example, there's not records specific to Walmart, for example. There's not records specific to the like this whole federal government thing. I just think that the way that the Bureau of Economic Statistics breaks them down, like they log agriculture and forestry and fishing and everything, it's just a different categorization. Okay. So I think it would be difficult, but having a standalone table that does outlines of one, you'd be kind of assured of having an apples to apples numbers. And even if it's different categories, you get the feel for it, you get the gist of it. So I think that's a reasonable request. And they could use they could use publicly available data so that it's easy to go to the reference source.
I think if these tables have any specific numbers, there also needs to be cited or noted at the bottom what year it's from or where it came from.
Right, like the Rapid City Chamber of Commerce below the employment
like
table.
In that case for top employers, when was that? 2017?
Yeah, that'd be good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my only comment on this section is that there's two places where they talk, we're talking about the universities, technical schools, and they go, they had higher level. The appropriate term is post-secondary. And so there's two places, and I'd like those changed.
Is there Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
is there a reason why? I mean, is that how it's referenced overall?
Just the standard terminology is post-secondary, anything beyond high school. So it's if there's a 1-year program of some sort, if there's the 2-year degrees, 4-year degrees, that's just what the proper term is, post-secondary.
I believe there's multiple places in this chapter to change that.
Yeah, at least two. Maybe I missed some,
Minimum.
but at least there's two. I know.
Yep.
Could be more.
I don't think you missed any. I just wanted to make comment that
Oh,
there was going to
okay.
be more than one.
Yeah.
Any other changes to chapter 4? So the second one you had, Kathy, was for page 4-4 regional health, second and third sentences.
Oh, yes. That, I just thought it was kind of awkward. Let me find that, page 4-4. Yeah. I just thought it was kind of awkward the way they were doing it. And so I looked on their website, and their website has it very, well, the other thing about this, I thought they don't really talk that Rapid City is its headquarters. It just said it has a location in Rapid City. Well, it's more than that. It's the headquarters. So I wanted to verify that. So I looked on their website, and they had this sentence, which I thought very succinctly said what we needed to say. Headquartered in Rapid City, Regional Health serves 20 communities across western South Dakota and eastern Wyoming. And I thought, why not just take those two sentences out and insert this one, which we know is accurate because it comes from their website, and it has the point that it's headquartered in Rapid City. So that was my thought on that.
I'm okay with that change.
Same here.
Okay. And then I would note the changes that we made to item ED 3.2, as well as the edits to items ED 4.4 and 4.5, where the symbols needed to show up. And then we switched the word major with other on ED 4.5. And the other items in chapter 4. Okay. Moving on to chapter 5. Anybody? Okay.
There was I'm sure Kathy, you had a comment,
Well,
and I wanted to
Yeah,
add to it.
I just didn't think that sentence, the county should encourage that high impact ag have low impact. I just didn't think it read quite right. And so I made a suggestion. So, I mean, I don't really, I don't know, do you have a comment on that too? Or?
Yeah, I did too, and I agree. It sounds funny, but what came to my mind is, do we want to talk about implementation of high impact or to promote low impact? I thought, for example, what might read nicely is the county should promote low impact agricultural processes so as to not negatively affect the surrounding sensitive land uses. So
Right.
I think promote low impact sounds better than the way that all these words are.
But for
about high
example,
impact.
if somebody wanted a feeding operation, confined animal feeding operation, KFU, or they're called, that's high impact. But I don't think we should necessarily say that that shouldn't be allowed, but it has to be done in a way that doesn't affect the surrounding area. So, I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with encouraging the low impact, but there are these high impact, and that's value added ag, and it's the big, it's important. Or like, agricultural what if it's a processing plant of some sort? Well, that's, those are high impact, but they can be done in a way that, at least I believe they can be done in a way that limits that impact. So that's really what I guess I had in my mind when I was.
I agree with that as well, but I don't have an issue with the words saying encourage implementation of high impact.
Okay, so I guess my point is that it wasn't we necessarily have to encourage high impact ag. It encourages when they're before us and they want a permit for something. That was my term, implementation. We'd make sure that implementation did not negatively affect surrounding land uses. So this no doubt can be worded better. And maybe maybe the county should ensure that high-impact ag processes do not negatively affect surrounding sensitive land.
That sounded pretty
better.
good.
Yeah, should,
Or that the county should ensure that high-impact processes do not negatively affect. But
yeah.
either way, yeah, one of those ways sounds much
Yeah, should
better.
encourage that high-impact agricultural processes do not negatively affect surrounding sensitive land uses. How's that?
I think we got it there, yeah.
Okay. I mean, that really was the gist of what I was
Yep.
after, but yes, improvement, I agree.
I'm okay with that. Anybody else? Concerns? Any other questions, comments for chapter 5? Moving on to chapter 6.
Okay, so my only thought there is that when they corrected this so that they didn't have the Mickelson Trail operated by the Forest Service, they just crossed it out, when indeed, so I'm just suggesting another sentence. It's kind of simple. The Mickelson Trail through the Black Hills is managed by South Dakota Game Fish and Parks. It's just a factual deal, so,
I like it.
okay.
I don't have any concerns with that. Does anybody have any edits to that? Okay. No more changes to chapter 6. How about chapter 7? Going once, going twice. We're on to chapter number 8. Okay, moving on to chapter number 9. Any questions or concerns?
Well, I just had that one on page 9-8, and I mean, this section is not goals, it's sort of stating the factual situation. And this sentence about hazardous waste pickup or disposal, I was a little bit mixed up on it or confused. So maybe PJ, you could inform
Sure.
this discussion.
Yep. So I looked into it a little bit. So there was, originally it was voted on that it'd be once a year.
But this
At least annually. Sorry.
this isn't the goal. This is what's the current situation.
Right. And then later, the planning commission, kind of mishing the two together. Then the planning commission, after hearing from, well, even before, when hearing from Dustin, voted on more of a as-needed basis, but never changed the other ones. So I just reported it as it came in, but checked with Dustin this morning. He said he remembers the same way, and annually is not possible as far as finances.
Right.
And to keep it with the commensurate with the need, I think was the language,
Right.
is he'd be okay with. So with changing it even here would be okay.
Yeah, because I think this part, isn't this just discussing the current situation?
Yes.
Yeah, this isn't what we're.
9-8, right?
On 9-8, yeah, so right now, the current situation is the county educates residents, I'm sure I suspect that's right. And the county also hosts hazardous waste events. I guess you do host them, don't you, periodically?
He does, yes.
Yeah, even in cooperation with the city, but nonetheless, it's probably okay to say you host them.
Well, it sounds like they use county property at the
Yeah,
fairgrounds, and the
yes, I
city
agree.
flipped most of the bill.
Okay.
And not Travis, sorry. Dustin is an employee of both the county and the city.
Oh, okay, so in other words, just strike at least once annually. That's his suggestion to make it accurate?
Yeah, or we could use his term, trying to find how he used it here, probably in the goal.
Oh, commensurate with need or something?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Well, that was the goal.
At
But
frequency commensurate with community need was his.
Yeah, well, I just think this one, we should just stop. We should just put a period after disposed and then put the goal that we're gonna do this as needed or something.
I think the goal was correct.
Yes.
I think the
right.
goal was edited correct in the document. It's just, I agree with you that this was not written similar. So we're just deleting at least once annually, putting a period, or commensurate with need. How would you like that?
Well, I think right now they're doing it as money allows. It doesn't have anything to do with the need. Oh, it does a little bit, but I mean, the primary driver is the financial
Correct,
currently.
correct. But then the goal
Right.
in this would be as the need.
Right, exactly. So to me, to be most accurate would be to put the period after disposed and not even address the frequency or anything. That'd be
Okay
my
with that,
suggestion.
because then it reads as it is today.
Yeah.
Chairman, this is just a note, if you don't
Good.
mind. I've noticed, and this is another formatting thing, it just really caught my eye in this chapter. I don't know why, probably because I was flipping through. But if you look at the bottom of the page 9-1, you can see it on the right-hand side, gets it to the right side page. 9-2 is on the left-hand side, 9-3 is on the right-hand side, and it's got a map. But then you get to 9-4. It's not on the edge, so when you're flipping through it easily, you don't find the page very easy. They've shifted the numbering to the inside of the page. Can we make the formatting? I like it on the outside when you're flipping through, you can see it. It just it looks like it's haphazard when they flipped it to the inside to the outside.
Yeah, let me,
It's like that way online.
So I think it's because it's the back of the page.
yeah, it could be just because of the way you guys have the document. It's an edited version with,
Oh, because it would have printed on that, okay.
yeah, I'm looking through the full edited version here without the maps, and they're all, you can see them as you flip through on the outsides.
Good catch,
But I
though.
will make a note of that.
I'm like flipping through, I'm like, where is the,
Any other questions, changes, edits for chapter 9? Okay, seeing none, moving on to chapter 10. I had some questions, but anybody else want to go first?
Well, we can, the one that I noted is on 10-5 under goal NCR-6. I just thought this, and this may mean something to the, in the planning staff, but for me, mining operations in Pennington County will be conditioned to be reclaimed. I didn't quite get that. I don't understand what will be conditioned really means. And I just thought it would be fine to say mining operations in Pennington County will be, what did I say? Will be
Reclaimed.
will be reclaimed. I just found that terminology will be conditioned to be odd. But I don't know. What does that mean, PJ?
Conditions added to the permit.
That's the way that's the way I would interpret it, but I see both sides of this.
Will be conditioned means conditions will be added to the permit?
Yeah, which would probably be better placed in the zoning document, not this one.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you're saying, though. That means conditioned. I just never heard of that will be conditioned in that way of speaking, but I understand.
Right.
The goal is that the mining operations will be reclaimed, not that they will be conditioned. That's your question, Kathy?
Yes.
Yeah, I think leaving it as being reclaimed in this document is fine, and let the zoning ordinance
Yeah, okay.
discuss the
Fair enough.
conditions.
just a quick input on there, maybe it's me just reading into it, or maybe it's wording. Excavation according to best practices is designed to restore the site for the pre-mining land use or to the pre-mining land use, does it? Because are they going to be reclaiming it for the pre-mining land use, or are they going to be reclaiming it to the pre-mining?
Two.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think two's really the better word.
I'm just,
But just to be clear, we're going to take out the phrase condition to be. Is that right?
Removing the words condition to be and changing the word for to
Yeah, okay. Very
between
good.
site and the.
Very good.
I have a little question about this. What are so this says best practices. Where do those best practices come from?
They usually come from state and federal regulations, And then we'll even take some local ones, like with the hard rock mining, we're working off of what Lawrence County has already done and has had that vetted.
So generally, that doesn't need to be described in any more detail, I think, right?
No,
Best
they,
practice-
best practices change.
Practices, yeah, okay.
They change.
Typically, the best practices would be listed in like the stormwater criteria manual or something along those lines, where the actual reclamation and how to seed, how to ensure that the topsoil stays put where it's at, and those types of things are all listed in those governing documents.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. For some reason in my version in chapter 10, all of the pages were shrunk, like the edits were going to be on the right-hand side, the lists, and then they weren't. So that just needs to be fixed. And then there were some things on here that I admittedly, I don't know where these are located. The Joseph and Marie Kudra Homestead and Ranch. This is on the National Historic List. You guys know where that's at? In the county? And I thought, how can I not know where this is at?
What is it again?
There's 4 sites on the NRHP. Those include Mount Rushmore National Memorial, the Joseph and Marie Kudrna, Kudrna Homestead and Ranch.
Where are you reading that at?
Yeah,
I'm
where are
on
you seeing it?
page 10-2,
And which paragraph?
bottom paragraph. So they talk about the 2 culturally significant Native American sites, Pine Ridge Reservation and then Paceslaw. And then they talk about, and then they kind of define what that is, right? So people know what that means. And then it talks about the 4 sites, NRHP, Mount Rushmore National Memorial, and then this homestead and ranch. And I thought, I don't even know where that's at. And I probably should.
I've never heard of it either.
And then Sitting Bull Crystal Cavern, I know where that's at. And then Bridge 52, 575, 383, which is the National Bridge Registry number. But I was thinking that should probably, there should just be a sentence that says maybe, Mount Rushmore is 10 miles or a few miles west of Keystone. The Kudra Homestead and Ranch is located here. The
East of Scenic, actually. We just figured.
east of Scenic.
I just pulled up, I just did a word search for it, and it mentions it's east of Scenic. So,
Huh.
yeah, right, it's right there, ranch east of Scenic.
So where is Bridge 52, 575, 383?
Look it up.
It's on.
That is a weird designation, yeah?
No, it's all bridges have that same 3-digit code, or that 233 code. I know that, but
I just meant in a document like this.
yeah, no, I was hoping to understand what. So, and then it talks about Mount Rushmore after that, but I thought if those things are on there and they're located in the county, maybe just a sentence that says this is here and then this one is here.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really add anything to the document per se, other than helps define it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's a whole bunch of them in here. We'd have to find it. But should just better clarify their location in the county.
I think so. Yeah.
Did you find out where that bridge is?
No, sorry.
Just do the Control F and then search that document. You might probably find it with that number.
Oh, I got it right here. Maybe I just put the number in.
East of Scenic.
It's in Pennington County computer.
There's a photo of it.
Oh, it's the bridge across the Cheyenne.
Oh.
That's the Cheyenne
I bet
computer.
it is. I bet it is. We canoe from there down to Wasta. I know that
Everquist
bridge.
Road.
Okay.
Watch your head going under that one, looks like.
Yeah,
And it's a historic bridge, huh?
must be.
It's on there.
Huh, interesting.
Sometimes you can open yourself up to funding if you get put on certain things. So maybe that's why some of those things were done. Wow.
Okay. You learn something new every day.
Any other items in chapter 10? Going on to chapter 11.
I'll just say that, and PJ, I apologize for being a little dense on what chapter 11 is, but I must admit I have been dense, but I think the light bulb finally went on here
Okay.
after thinking about this and kind of studying what Matrix wrote and so on. And so my understanding is that that there are, definite actions that are necessary before all of these goals can be accomplished. And some of those are the creation of new ordinances, as an example. And so that's what 11 is. It's just these very specific things that need to be done in order to implement and to achieve these goals.
Right.
Is that,
Yep.
am I kind of
And
right?
help it, yeah.
Okay.
Little step by steps.
Yeah.
It's-
And so, because the goals don't say create an ordinance, it just says accomplish these things. And so you need these okay, so that's why I think that the word, at least for me as a layperson, trying to understand this, the word necessary is to me more meaningful than the word appropriate, because I mean, these things, we're saying that these things are necessary in order to accomplish what we have in this document.
Right.
So that's why I prefer the word necessary. I don't know how you feel about that.
No,
And
I
then, and then,
support it.
and then the word to help ensure that necessary actions are taken. And I change that to considered, or I suggest changing it because, once again, this is just a guiding document. It's not a thou shalt do document. And I just think that the furthest we can take this is to ensure that these actions are considered, and then it's up to the Board of Commissioners and others to decide whether they're really going to take these actions or not. So that was my thinking. And it's a, it sounds like kind of small change, but to me made it clearer in what at least I think this is out to achieve.
No, I guess I don't have any concerns with your changes on page 11-1. I would echo your comments to the consultant. It was kind of like, how did you come up with all of these, or what was your criteria where you said that these are the things that we should do? And it seems like they came back with these answers that didn't really have the technical, this is why we did this one, this is why we did this one.
They didn't.
And those, so that was the hard part for me to try to understand what they did, but I understand what you're saying as well. I mean, these are just the goals that they gathered out of the document that they think need to be implemented.
That they need to be done.
Right.
And I along with what you said, I don't believe that really that these are this is an exhaustive list.
It is not.
But for whatever reason, they put these in. If the planning department staff are in agreement that these are the ones that should be listed, and there's others that don't need to be, well then, I mean, I don't have the technical understanding to really know. But this is certainly a beginning.
Okay, so back to page 11-1. Anybody have concerns with the changes recommended by Kathy? Okay, we'll make the change then on 11-1, going on to 11-2, action item 5, another shall to should. I'm okay with that.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, sir.
I think there's another shall that should be a should, and that's item number 8. The county shall develop or should develop a right to farm ordinance designed to protect agricultural land uses. When you look at all of these, and just because we're talking about the shall and should, there are some of these that I think the shall is appropriate, and then the should is appropriate, and I'll kind of point them out, but that's the first one that I saw on 8. Do y'all agree or disagree?
Well, I'm just going back to,
11-2.
So she was on number 5. The county shall adopt a current version of the International Building Code, and you said should.
Good.
Well, the reason that on 5 is just to match this LUH 5, because LUH 5 says should rather than shall. So that was, I just was trying to match these. And so if you look at the ag ones, what chapter's ag in? AGs. That was.
Chapter 5.
Is it 5? Okay, 5. Let's just see what it says. 5. I think I checked that and it was consistent, but maybe not. Okay, so 5. Which one did you say? Okay, ag, AG-1. AG-1. Well, I don't really see it specifically called out this, but
Because it's saying shall develop an ordinance.
As far as definitions go, shall is to will what should is to would. So shall is supposed to be something that happens in the future. And should
And
is
it's a
little
directive.
more.
yeah, I'm okay with should.
And then on item number 5 on page 11-2, that was another shall to should.
Yes.
Yes.
Any
Did
other
we go back to chapter 4 or chapter 5 and change anything, or were you just referencing it?
We were just,
I was just seeing what it said because I was trying to make sure that there was some consistency between what 11 said and what these others say.
Okay.
But
Yep,
I
that's
don't
what
really
thought.
even see specifically the right to farm ordinance, although I'm sure I read this somewhere. Where did it?
So the only
AG 1.4.
Oh, right here. Okay, so look at Ag 1.4. This is on page 5-3. The county shall generally condition discretionary permits for residential subdivisions to record a right to farm notice. So here again, that says shall record these right to farm notices, which then when I was reading this made me think that, well, then you need to have a shall when it says we need to develop this ordinance, but maybe that's not right. And so the should is just perfectly okay. Understand what I'm saying? Because I look back here at what it
Oh,
said.
yeah, yeah. I was thinking.
But I'm not arguing one way or another. I'm just trying to be consistent here.
Because don't we already have something similar to that currently? No?
No. The right to farm is basically, as long as they're within operational parameters, and who knows what those are, and I guess best management practices for farming, that if you're an adjoining landowner, you can't sue.
Okay.
So that would take some developing on state's attorney's part for us.
I just see this, it's directing the county to make an ordinance rather than leaving it up to the county to determine whether or not they do it.
It's fine with me to put should.
So item 5 and item 8 are shoulds instead of shalls. The only shall and left in items 1 through 9 then is item 6. Everything else is should. Okay. Page 11-6, item 32.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe you can address this, but I think, didn't the county, they do a lot more on Spring Creek than just do this monitoring. I thought,
We have. And I asked, that's why I went back and texted. I asked Brittany to come down. She can kind of explain, we haven't done anything with the state on this. It's kind of stopped, if I understand.
okay, so what should it be? What should 32 be then? In terms of, I mean, realistically, what would you like that to say?
Well, at this time, that monitoring program and that program is actually like ended essentially.
Okay.
Unless we resubmit applications and restart the program, there isn't really any action being done on the county's part on Spring Creek.
So should item 32 be struck?
I would say yes, because there isn't any continuing monitoring or anything like that on the creek done by the county.
Okay.
The state has sites on
Yeah.
on Spring Creek,
Right.
but we're not doing any.
Okay, so then just strike it, okay.
Why was the monitoring set up?
Originally, there was, the creek was listed on the 303D list for impairments for E. coli. So the county, back in 2012, submitted a grant application, and we did monitoring as part of the grant application. We implemented some best management practices. We did some cost share for riparian practices, for some stormwater improvements in the areas, and some upgrade to septics. And we did that monitoring as part of that program to monitor the effectiveness of the BMPs. And just kind of look at some areas and some segments, because the WQM, or the water quality monitoring sites that the state had, were pretty, sparsely separated. So we kind of honed in on areas and tributaries where we saw some of the impairments that they were coming from. So, and that information has all been given to the state, and they use it in their integrated report when they update the 303D list every 2
Okay.
years.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm okay striking it if it's something that's not being done and it doesn't, I mean, if it needs to be done for a specific purpose, in my mind, the commission and the board can redirect that to happen, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be a goal.
Yeah, so just delete it, yeah.
Strike
That's all.
32.
So that's,
Okay.
Thank you, Brittany. Your expertise is always helpful.
On 11, item 33, consider replacing shall with should.
yeah, I mean, there's two things really. One is that the goals don't call for this. And so I thought that the should would be more appropriate than shall. But then you can see my comment about, I mean, do we really, I mean, monitoring program, that's a kind of a big deal. And I don't know, what do you think, what does you and your staff think on this? I mean, do you really want to do a monitoring program on all the aquifers?
Well,
That was
water
the current
quality
staff.
and quantity is coming up more and more every meeting. I mean, something needs to be done, whether it's at the county level or the state level, I don't know, but we'd like our hand in it. So maybe more of a general statement, not necessarily.
Well, could you say something like, because the state's already doing it to some degree, they just don't have the coverage. And they've got a little different criteria for picking which, aquifers they target. But could you say that the state should partner with South Dakota DENR on their groundwater quality monitoring network, or
And levels,
what's that?
because they have they have level wells everywhere, correct?
Well, yeah, but they have the whole state, so the density is not so great, but they're looking at, which wells, when they want to expand, which wells to look at. And so you could have some input, I suspect, and.
I think that your verbiage is getting to the point, probably more along the lines of where the county wants to be, is partnering with the DNR on the wells.
Do we get into the same concern of using the word partnering to be financial commitment, like we had talked about at the previous
Yeah,
meeting on
well, that
another
was
part?
participate, but, I mean, that's a good point.
Collaborate, coordinate.
Break out the thesaurus.
How
Throwing
about
out
we just
some-
say work with? How about we say, because work with is pretty open.
Leave it open, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm okay with that.
okay, work with,
County shall continue to work with the state DNR
on their statewide groundwater quality monitoring network, and,
within the 5 aquifers in Pennington County.
And then we can get more specific if in the ordinance possibly.
Okay.
Probably won't be necessarily just in that document, probably in some other ones, water quality manual stuff.
Okay. I'm okay with that. The next one was action item 34. Please clarify action on this item.
oh, yeah, I just was curious about that. What really is, what's really underneath this in terms of, what do you need, what is necessary that you don't already have in terms of 34 to require appropriate bonding to ensure remediation and,
Well, we're already adding it into the new ordinances
I
as they
know.
write. I mean, it was put into 320, it's
Oh.
going to be in 507A.
Right.
I get your point on this, is
yeah,
should it really be here?
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I don't think it needs to be.
okay, so delete 34.
So because it's in the ordinance, we shouldn't mention it here?
No, if it's already there, there's no need.
I
What
mean,
if in 10
yeah,
years, somebody comes along and changes the ordinance? I'm just hypothetically. If it was still in here, we would still be saying this is important, and it is.
Well, if it were in there, I honestly don't believe in 10 years' time, people are gonna be looking at this. I mean, I think they're gonna be dealing with whatever ordinances are in place, but,
Right.
I mean, they may be studying it.
Has there been, over time, a lot of expense incurred by the county for such remediation?
Not through our office. I can't speak for highway.
I'm thinking if it is a real issue, it's important that we point it out.
And I did a word search for bond. This is the only place in the whole comp plan that it appears, and it's in the goals section, so.
oh, I know, I looked through too, and so I don't know, it just seems to me if this is a list of actions and need that are necessary to be taken to make this work, and that action's already been taken, I just couldn't quite see why having it, but unless I was missing something.
So this point exists elsewhere, you said?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't, oh.
The word bond only appears right there in 34 is highlighted, and is an ongoing goal. Is it a preventative maintenance type of thing for over the years? As long as the county adopts this type of mentality in their ordinances, then it'll progress. That's what I'm thinking about it now.
Right, it seems like it's something like just ensure that the county is doing that and making sure it's appropriate as time goes by. You know, it might be $100, bond now and a $20,000 bond later, depending on the cost of product. I don't know, maybe it's just to keep the county aware of keeping an eye out for watching that particular area.
I think even if it feels redundant to be in here, there's no harm in it being here either.
It does provide the county a little extra oomph, if you will, if we put it in the zoning ordinance, because then we would refer back to, well, it's in our guiding document to do it.
Well, then and that's okay with me, but then I'd like you to consider rather than should require appropriate bonding, we should ensure that there's a mechanism in place to cover the bonding. I mean, that's really what because then, or that, just be clear, the county should ensure that bonding requirements are in the ordinances or something, just
Right.
rather be
Yeah.
real kind of simple about it.
Just say what we want.
Yeah, county ensure that ordinances include requirement for bonding.
Couldn't that apply to everything we have in here? Like when we say in the ordinance, a lot of the stuff is in the ordinance, so.
But it's not going to be specific. It would be specific to everything that would require bonding, is what you're saying. Is that if there's development that the county is concerned about, then bonding would be required.
Yeah, that's right. Or then we say, I forget what I said, but we could say where appropriate, or the ordinances that are appropriate for it or something. But because that's really what you're talking about here, is to have some guiding language so that it can be included in the ordinances.
Correct. And the ordinance will be specific, of course.
Yes, and not every ordinance is going to need bonding, not zoning ordinances and so on, but
Correct.
certain ones will. So anyway, that's my.
So at the end of it, just comma, where appropriate?
So how would it be written?
So what's the words now that we're working with here?
Yes.
I'd say
That's the
leave it as
question.
it is, but add at the end, comma, where appropriate. Unless you want to change should to shall. Shall is more affirmative. I like the word shall.
County should
Ensure, I think is what you said.
that ordinances include requirements for, I think financial assurance is actually a broader term than bonding. Financial assurance for remediation and restoration where appropriate. where appropriate. That
Say again, the county should ensure
county
that,
should ensure that ordinances include the requirement for financial assurance for remediation and restoration where appropriate.
I think that's okay.
Okay?
Mhm.
All right.
Good. Okay. Anything else on item 19? So now that that's done, would we be looking for staff's is making a recommendation that the planning commission review the ordinance amendment, the draft comprehensive plan with a recommendation to the board of commissioners. So I guess if we've gone through that and we're okay pushing this forward to the board with the changes noted today and incorporated within, we would need a motion in order to do that.
So moved.
Second.
What exactly does that motion need to entail?
The function, your recommendation?
What's that?
Your recommendation, sorry, we were talking dates. But
Okay.
I heard a second on the planning commission.
I said that, assuming that the board is, or the commission here is okay with all of the changes made today and incorporated within moving this document to the board of commissioners, with the changes incorporated, I would need that recommendation. And then he said motion.
Okay,
And
so
second.
I would go back and word a specific motion.
Okay.
Use the word recommendation in there. Just because of the history of the county and comprehensive plans and adoption, we want to make sure.
I'll do that, Rich, if you want.
Go ahead.
I make a motion that we approve the current document. What
You
is
make a
our number?
recommendation?
Yeah, or, say again?
You're making a recommendation?
I'm making a motion that we recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the document in its current state after all these edits are factored in. Is that kind of what you're looking at?
Yes, I would, that planning commission recommend approval of the comprehensive plan after the edits are made. I think it'd be as simple as that.
And Ordinance Amendment 1901.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was, yeah, I did say 1901, Ordinance Amendment 1901. I agree, that sounds where I was at.
Yeah. See, planning commission recommends approval of comprehensive plan amendment, no, of ordinance amendment 1901 with recommended changes, which is what you did today.
That sounds like what I was getting at.
Yeah, I
So
think
that
that'll
would
get
be
you up
my
there.
motion.
I'll get you up there, yep.
And I'll second that motion.
Further discussion on said motion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries.
That's either looking at the second meeting in August or the first meeting in September before the board. That's what, by the time he gets there, just so you're aware. But we'll send out, once we get the edits back from Matrix, we'll send those out to you.
Okay. Brings us to item number 20, the county board report.
The Board of Commissioners concurred with the Planning Commission's recommendation from the June 24th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting.
Okay. There are no people in the audience at this time, so we'll skip by item 21. We're on item number 22, items from staff.
All right, so the first, there's going to be 4 items, sorry, I'll make them quick.
Okay.
The first item is the building.
Apparently, that's not going to change. With you being chair, there's always going to be added items.
There was always. The first is the building permit report for June 2019. Again, still showing a downward trend for the number of building permits that are coming in. I took out the last 4 items, the removals of residential buildings, the removals of non-residential buildings, the removal of mobile homes and signs. And that still showed us at a 19% decrease in the number of building permits that are coming in. So, but as far as valuation, they're only about as far as an average, about $3,000 difference. So, thought we expected to see a little bit of an uptick with building permits coming in once the weather changed. There hasn't really been much. We know our septic or on-site wastewater specialist has gotten busy. He's pretty much been office bound for a while, mainly due to weather because you can't go out and check profile holes and people can't do percolation tests when it's storming, but his weeks are starting to get busier and busier. So nothing further on that.
Okay. Next item.
Yeah, the next is the planning commission bylaws. Usually bring it up every year and just check to see if the planning commission is interested in updating them. They are a little outdated. Just like with today, because our bylaws specifically say that the votes have to be done by ballot, we're not able to vote by acclamation, which is the popular approval of anybody that is not being run against, basically. If we were to do that, if the planning commission wanted to, I'd like maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of you to make sure we don't have a quorum problem. And then we can meet and just go through them. And we have a couple examples of some other counties that we could use, but with the comp plan and the zoning ordinance changing, I think it'd probably be a good idea to look at them.
Okay.
If you want to.
I would be in favor of that. If we're updating things, we should try to get them up to where they need to be. Is there anybody else that would be interested in working through those?
Yeah, I would, and I agree with you. I think it's time, periodically, it's just good practice to do it. I'd be willing to serve on that committee.
Okay.
Yeah, I would as well.
So just anybody else? That'd just be 3 of us then, and I'll email you, but
We
make
can't
sure.
have another one.
We 4 is your
4
quorum.
would be a quorum.
That's why 3, yeah. I don't count.
Right, but if 3 of them did it.
Oh, did you?
I can help too.
I didn't hear you say that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
I thought about saying I was interested too, but then Sandy jumped there, so I was like, oh, that's
Oh, you
4,
can-
so
you-
never mind.
If you're more interested than I,
I'll take a break, I'm good.
Yeah. Maybe an at-large member in case somebody can't show up.
Maybe, yeah, just give me a heads up, and if somebody else can't show up, I'd be willing to go in there.
So I'll start that email chain probably later this week and we'll get moving on that.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, next item is speaker request form. So being a new meeting, we didn't bring those out today. I know there was some discussion about using them for the planning commission. So I wanted this quote unquote new planning commission to decide if you'd like to use them this year.
I thought it was mentioned at the beginning that there were speaker request forms when you indicated the agenda was at the back of the building or the room.
I brought those up because they've been used a few times in some of the more contentious
Yeah,
meetings
I
with
see.
a lot of folks. I don't know if we necessarily need them for every single meeting. If there's large meetings with large number of speakers, then it's important to ensure that everyone gets their fair shake, I guess, at when speaking. But
It won't matter to staff either way. If you find that it helps with the organization, I know Travis was the one that actually went through it. But if the planning commission wants to make a decision as a whole,
what do you think,
it was a
Travis?
recommendation from the board to use them.
The only hiccup with them that I found was we were going through one of the items, and I had 2 names, and there was already a recommendation by one of the planning commissioners before I could even get to the point of saying, hey, would anybody like to discuss this item? So it could have been just that individual just went ahead and did that, but it was one of those things. Well, if you go through the normal process, then maybe that just gave a flag for me that was the only thing that gave me a flag to say, hold on, wait a minute, we didn't ask public. But outside of that, that was one incident. Most of the time, we're pretty good at, trying to at least incorporate public, even when someone does a motion before we move to the aspect of asking for public input. So that's about the only benefit that I saw. Everything else, for the contentious ones, it was very good for that one, but I think that would be a standard policy anyway, because it kind of gives you an idea how long we're going to be here. Outside of that, I think we're pretty fair and open here, so.
Okay.
I'll say this, and really, I'm not, I'm not the person that has to deal with this, but I have a hard time understanding people's names. I mean, frequently, I don't really know who's the speaker because they don't articulate, they don't speak loudly enough. Sometimes the name is hard to, so if I were in the chair spot, I would be appreciative of a sheet that has the name on it so that you really know who that's talking, as well as kind of for the records.
Mhm.
And, it's not me that has to sort through these names. So, I don't know, but I just think that's kind of a nice thing to have the names written out.
Okay. Blade, what's your thoughts on it?
My thought, actually, this is what I brought forward to the commission was the speaker request form as a sense of structure. And that's what it is a sense of structure. You know, the chairman has control of how he wants to run his meeting. If he wants to let people walk up and introduce, you can do that. But the speaker request form provides the structure for a newcomer. We're all used to doing this stuff. Other people that walk in off the street, they don't know. They see the agenda. You tell them at the beginning, the agenda's back there, but they don't know if they should stand up and when they want to speak. But this gives them the structure. You can fill this out. I want to speak on my item. It gives them the sense, but it also helps the chairman and the vice chair because if you set them up, you say you got a speaker that wants and the item, and it helps you control the structure of your meeting. That's not saying you're trying to limit somebody. I mean, you can let somebody come up, wants a question and so forth. But that was the main reason for it. At times when we get to contentious items, that's when it's really helpful.
Right.
And if you have that structure in place, you're following in it, you're able to, at this, you know, we have this month, we're going to have this one big item beginning of the meeting. We are going to follow the 3-minute rule, speaker requests.
Yeah.
We're going to organize that. But it's mainly there to help the chair and to keep things structured, because normally what you want to do is take your public comment first, and then the board, you stop that and you just do your discussion. If you notice, like today, you're trying to have your discussion to make your decision after you've taken public comment, and all of a sudden you're letting them come back up. It scatters you all over the place. It brings up new issues and problems.
Yeah, I see your,
You know what
your
I'm
points.
saying?
Yes, and thank you very much for those. It formalizes the process of the meeting, and so I guess I'll back up a little bit, and I like when you said that they speak out of turn and those types of things in the audience. I think that this provides anybody when they walk through the door the instruction on the process if they're not used to the meeting. And so I think it's something that we probably should do. Even though it may be a little bit more administrative work to get it done, I think it will help the public understand the process.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, sir.
as long as we ensure that individuals who come in who might be introverts, who might not know the process, who have seen it in the past, expecting to hear us ask for them to come forward, that just because they don't fill out a speaker request form, that would deny them that capability, because sometimes they may not know that process, or if they come in the middle after we've already started and the process has been going on for a while, they may not know to come and fill out one.
That's the hard part is that I will at this front end of the meeting list what they would need to do to start speaking. But if they come in 20 minutes late and those instructions are already given, I don't know what we can do in those scenarios other than take them as they come and try to help as much as possible. There's been a few times where we've had to rehear issues because the person sitting in the audience, they got no idea they should be standing up and asking questions.
Sure, it has that discretion.
Yep.
So I think that we would want to use them moving forward.
Okay. And I would recommend every meeting then,
Yep.
not just for special occasions.
Yep.
Good. I'm good with that. I think that's a wise decision.
And then, did you send out that example speaker request form when we were hearing the Kroll stuff? I think you did.
Oh, yeah, and we have some here.
I'll just grab one.
Okay. Well, let's pass them out to everybody so everybody has one. We basically modeled the last ones we've been using for the last couple months. We've modeled off of the board and just changed some of the verbiage around.
Okay.
So,
Great.
yep. The last thing real quick is we were talking a little bit earlier with that one lady in Trailwood Village and with staff being, lenient on things, and it comes back to kind of hurt us later. One item that the board years ago, and I'm talking even before I came on, what they had approved for the planning director to do, and is within ordinance regulations, was to allow kind of a 30, 60, or 90-day memo. So basically, kind of bend it a little bit, but you don't actually go against the ordinance, to allow people time to get some things done, to ultimately save them a public hearing or the expense of an extra permit, or to save them from fines. When we did those, they did come back to hurt us big time. But I wanted to put out, because I did get the sense from the planning commission that, a little bit of leniency from the staff is kind of encouraged, and we try to. There's only so far that we can go in the ordinance, but that is an extra tool that has already had precedence. It's basically the planning director's discretion to choose, is it going to be 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days? We have one individual we gave a 90-day window for, and we're at 2.5 years. And you can see the house on the stilts as you enter into Hill City. If anybody knows that house.
I do know that house.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
one thing that, like, for example, I believe this is what the city does. If you don't want to do something to bring you up to ordinance, so on, they require a bond. You either have to do the work or you have to bond for it. And I don't know if that would be out of a financial, reach of an individual homeowner, but it does get their attention in terms of they've got that money tied up then. And it has to, the financial has to be commensurate with the actual, work that's going on. But that's something, maybe just a seed to plant for you to consider, that it might be a way to provide some leniency, flexibility perhaps, not leniency, and then but hold some assurance that they're going to get this work done if they want their bond released.
That's a good idea. And our plan with the zoning ordinance is to make a lot more administrative, because a lot of this comes up to the amount of time it takes for somebody when they have a problem and there's an ordinance violation, and we get notified somehow, and then they get 6 weeks for a conditional use permit. So in some cases, not necessarily CUPs because that's state law, but we are looking to make it administrative a little bit faster for some people, because it is the amount of time that it takes, which just discourages some people. And we get that. We feel their pain, and we let them know we understand, and we're trying to change it. But right now, as far as staff goes, we have to follow what's in the book. So encourage and be happy that you guys are going to be a part of this zoning ordinance change, because you guys understand the history of what's been going on. So.
I am curious. I mean, as soon as this document gets approved by the board, and maybe even prior to that, is there a plan of attack for going after the items that are listed as goals, and the time sequences for when those things would be happening, so we have some targets in the next X number of years to get all of this stuff done?
So the main things to go after is the zoning ordinance update, the floodplain ordinance update, county ordinance 106, which is a nuisance ordinance, which isn't a zoning ordinance, to change those, because those are all those guiding documents we always talk about. And then everything else will fall into place after that. In addition to that, some of the discussion at the board level for the budgets is to hire an additional attorney in the state's attorney's office, and one of their jobs will be to help rewrite the zoning ordinance. So we necessarily wouldn't have to outsource it, staff wouldn't have to do it. But again, that's been recommended so far for that position, but we still have until the last meeting in the budget cycle to see if that goes through. But that is the intent right now.
Okay.
Help that move forward.
Would we do all of them at the same time, or one at a time?
At
a time?
I think that they will happen simultaneously.
Because
the zoning ordinance will start first, and then when we get it, then that'll help guide what's going to happen in the other documents.
Okay.
So as we get through the first few chapters, I assume that structure won't change much, but as we get through some of the chapters, the big thing is going to be in the zoning districts, what the permitted and the allowed uses are going to be. So
sure.
If you guys want to start thinking about that, that's going to be a big one. Matrix gives a little bit of a guide in the comp, bless you, in the comp plan. But as you know, in some of our districts, they're 26, 32 items long, and they only give about 5 or 7 examples.
Okay. Is that the fourth item you had?
That was it, the 30, 60, 90, if that was something that you would like us to maybe start back up again. I just wanted to put it out there that it is something that has precedence. We've used it. It does come with like everything else, it does come with its own challenges. But I do get the sense of, we're trying to be, and staff is, as far as we can, be as lenient and, or maybe not lenient, as flexible as possible without breaking the law.
With the issue today, she's able to start the dirt work and she's able to start the concrete work, and she'll be spending real dollars at that point, which will encourage her to take care of the two issues that are going to prevent her from getting a building permit. So I think that, I don't know if I would necessarily make the change, I guess, but unless there's other circumstances.
There's a lot of
other
different,
thoughts?
sorry.
Not knowing, what exactly were the issues with those 30, 60, 90s before? The staff would give an individual 30 or 60 days to meet a portion of the requirements, or how did that work?
Essentially, depending on what the use was. Sometimes a developer needs to store. We had one person bring a bunch of houses down from North Dakota and wanted to put them on their property temporarily. Well, we did a 90-day memo with them, and they were able to get them off the property in no time. But the problem with those is, well, we put it on our calendar, so it's not staff oversight. It doesn't have any real enforcement action. If the person doesn't do it, it just delays the inevitable of having to send out notice of violation letters, because now we've given you 90 days and you still haven't done what you're supposed to. So we mail out a letter, wait 10 more days. Still don't hear, mail out another letter, wait 10 more days. Mail out a certified letter, wait. So we're already a month out before it goes up to the state's attorney's office. But
So this is allowing them to do something outside of the ordinance without getting a CUP or getting something. It was just giving them like a few days to do something, or 30, 60, 90 days to do something without actually going through the process of coming to the planning commission to get approval. Is that what you're saying?
It slowly delays legally the enforcement of the ordinance.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Yeah. And
specifically.
Some people, it works famously and they're happy with it, but there are other people that have taken extreme what's the word? Sorry. They've used it to their benefit and we suffer from it. Advantage of it.
Take advantage.
I guess maybe if there's a way to build in a safeguard to that. In other words, if you didn't meet the criteria, 30, 60, 90, whatever the timeline is, then there's got to be a statement in there of what is the consequence. Your permit's denied, you don't get a refund. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's something to work in that way, because sometimes.
That's when you collect the bonds in advance, and if you don't get it done in 90 days, then you can keep the bond essentially. I mean, then there is some financial incentive to get your work done.
And I don't know if I'm comfortable with bonds for everyday people, though. I mean, a business maybe, but
know either.
individuals like me, I'd be like, a bond,
See, I
crud.
don't know either. What might be completely out of reach, but it happens. You don't want to build a sidewalk? Okay, you bond for it. In the city of Rapid City, they do that.
And this isn't something we'd put in the ordinance. This isn't something we want out there, because then everybody would try and use it. But it is an extra little tool that we have. And I think that if somebody does choose to not do what they're supposed to do, it does show that the county tried, whether it be the 30, 60, or 90.
No, I think it's kind of getting late hour. We need to talk about this at another time to really focus.
That's fine. I just wanted to bring it up.
I'll just make one comment. I think, once in a while, we just got to accept that we're going to have some bad eggs. I think the benefits of this is going to help the majority of the public, but identify that we're going to have problems with a few. If we know those few, we don't do it. If we don't, we just accept that once in a while we're going to have a problem with it. But the better part of it, the good, is going to come from it, I think.
Yeah, that's probably very wise counsel.
That was all.
Okay. Items from the membership.
Rich, I have one thing.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, I'd just like to publicly acknowledge our leadership from Travis the last 2 years. You've not only have you run the business of the day, I think in a very fair and even-handed way, and it's always been enjoyable to come and to the meetings and so on. So I really want to say how much, personally and perhaps from the board, that, we appreciate that. But, also this you've been on it 3 years. I've been here just 2. But you've managed through some pretty potentially thorny issues. And, three that come to mind is, you brought the mining ordinance 320 to the end where we can recommend that to the Board of Commissioners, and the Kroll hearings. That wasn't without some challenges and some planning and preparation. And so, you did that very well. And then even this comp plan. I mean, unfortunately, you were one meeting short of us actually forwarding it on to the commission. But, the heavy lifting through this was through your leadership. So, I just want to, on the record, that we thank Travis for those 2 years as our leader.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, actually. So I wanted to come back and continue to serve. So
So we're glad for that.
I echo Kathy's comments. Travis and I have been on at the same time. So another thing that got added to there was the VHR stuff, right? I don't remember when that exactly was done.
Beginning when you guys came on.
Yeah.
Yep.
So those were fun meetings too.
I won't be here next meeting. Sorry.
Okay.
Just so y'all know.
Taking advantage of.
It's the same time every year that I'm gone, so it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm no longer chair, that I'm taking advantage of leaving. No, I'm not here the last week in July typically, so.
And we anticipate meetings to be kind of like last week's, a little bit faster now that the comp plan stuff isn't going to be on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any
you,
other
Rich.
items from the membership? Okay. Item 24, adjournment. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I was wondering who's going to take the first motion. Motion and second for adjournment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, everybody.